a look at what happened. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia. These are the missiles.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Glory. It is Monday morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is rise and shine time. It is Monday the 10th of March. It's 3 minutes past 6. It's dark as hell out there, but don't worry, because the sun has come out over the course of the weekend. It felt like spring. It felt like it was a new beginning. It felt like, you know, if only we could start again. If only we can wake ourselves up from this miasmic nightmare trap that we've been in for the past 9 months, since Labour have become the party of government. If only we could just look forward to the future, a future open and absolutely willing to welcome us with open arms. You know, imagine a future where there were no more illegal migrants. Imagine a future where the economy actually started to increase and help you, rather than an economy which was grabbing you by the throat and trying to choke you to death. Imagine actually having the opportunity to make Britain great again, because that would be wonderful, wouldn't it? I'm sorry to tell you, that is not the message I'm going to be able to bring you this morning, because I'm afraid Keir Starmer and his merry band of complete and utter knaves, and I want to say the word that begins with F and ends with wits, but I can't say it because I'm not allowed to. But you know what I mean. You know, the entire band of merry men and women and non-binary people have completely and utterly buggered up this country, and they're not making it any better with anything that they've done over the last couple of days. But don't worry, Tom Slater's here from Spiked Online. Tom, very good morning to you.
Morning.
We're going to be trying to decipher all of the things that have been going on. Front pages today, all completely different. The Sun has got a story that says chats of the day. Match of the day has worked out that they've got a future if they have terrestrial TV for the rest of the time and a licence fee that you have to pay them. They're going to do a football show without any football. Yeah, that's right. They've decided actually it's better to have people talking about football than it is to watch football. Thanks very much indeed, but no thanks. The Times has got £250 a year off a bill for living near new pylons. This one suddenly struck me as going, listen, if the government's going to start paying us for things we don't want, how about they pay us to take a load of illegal immigrants? Maybe they can give us $500 a year for that, and we'll see how that goes. Front page of the Daily Mail says the woke RAF is running out of Top Gun pilots. Doesn't sound great, does it? But entirely and utterly believable. And the Telegraph, of course, finally, a story about Ukraine. Trump apparently has said Ukraine may not survive. We've got plenty to do, loads of time to do it in. If you've forgotten how to get in touch, have a listen to this.
Good morning, Mike. Chris from Barnsley. Great show as always.
Morning, Mike. It's James from Blackburn. Just sat here having a coffee.
That woman, she makes me so mad. This law makes me so mad.
Good morning, Mike. Great show as always, mate.
Saw Lindsay Oil shouting, "Order, order! Can I order some champagne, please, like?"
Lindsay Hoyle, by the way, it turns out we did this story last week, spent £250,000 swanning around the world, going to various places like the Cayman Islands, Singapore, South Africa, and Los Angeles, amongst many other places. It turns out he took his missus with him quite a lot of the time, so if he was actually not just going on a jolly, why is he taking his wife? Apparently, according to a statement from the office of the Speaker of the House of Commons, all expenses and costs are processed and published in line with rules from the House of Commons administration, whose accounts are audited annually by the National Audit Office. I mean, do me a small favour, mate. You should not be taking the P out of the taxpayer. You should not be travelling around the world, having jollies, taking extra suitcases and taking various members of your family to variously very expensive hotels. I don't think it's that difficult, is it? Thanks very much indeed. We'll get into that story a little bit later on, as we will with loads of other things too. Tom Slater is here, as I say. Tom, very good morning to you.
Morning.
I don't know where we begin today, because it's sort of all over the place, isn't it? I mean, Ukraine, in a bizarre kind of way, seems to have taken a bit of a back seat over the course of the last few days, because obviously one thing we haven't mentioned is reform. Yeah. And reform sort of is the big story in a way, isn't it? Shall we start with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This kind of ongoing civil war. I see there's this story in the Mail today.
Story in the Mail today about Rupert Lowe, who is, you know, let's put our cards on the table. Rupert Lowe appears on this show often. Richard Tice is a good friend of mine. Nigel Farage is I wouldn't say a good friend of mine, but it's somebody I know very well. Lee Anderson, not so much. I haven't met the other guy who was accused of beating up his girlfriend. But basically, you know, reform and talk are kind of, you know, what you might call similar bedfellows, in the sense that, you know, much of what they do, much of what they say, we've been saying for years. You know, much of their policy on net zero, on immigration, on all the sort of subjects that we talk about an awful lot on here, are very much aligned with what we believe here.
No, absolutely. So it's an interesting one, isn't it, where you're got that kind of proximity to it, yet at the same time I think most people who supported reform or who just took an active interest in their rise up the political ranks were kind of shocked to see this burst out into the open. I mean, the latest development here is that Rupert Lowe was actually doing kind of fundraising events with potential donors hours before he was reported to the police by Reform HQ, allegedly for sending kind of threats to the chairman, Zia Youssef, which has kind of cast some doubt on this version of events that he was, quote-unquote, kind of out of control, not being a team player.
Well,
so
they're
the
sort of
plot
trying to paint this
instance.
idea of him as this kind of, you know, crazed old bloke, really, aren't they?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems to be where they're going with this. And you know, I must admit, I don't think I've ever actually met Rupert. But I don't get the impression that he is that man that they're trying to commit. They're trying to make out that he is.
It's a really confusing story, isn't it? And it does basically come down to one side says this, the other side says this. It's worth noting that we've learnt in recent days that the kind of chronology here seems to be that this investigation was opened into allegations of bullying in his constituency office. Then he makes those comments in the Mail, those quite explosive comments talking about Nigel Farage might have great qualities, but can he lead us into government? Not sure. Then you have
were they explosive comments? I mean, let me just take you back to those in a moment. Were they explosive? I mean, he kind of cast doubt on whether or not, if there was to be another election, whether Nigel Farage would be the head of the party, whether he could actually take them into government. It seems to me that that's a reasonable, you know, comment to make, isn't it? I mean, it's not incredibly unreasonable.
I think he either had no idea what he was doing by making those comments, or it was a pretty clear shot across the bows of Farage. I just don't think there's any other way to interpret that. I mean, when you're in a political party, like the kind of the onus is very much on everyone to not be questioning the leadership, to all be seen to be singing from the same hymn sheet, even if you're not doing so internally. And I think he would have known how that would have been interpreted.
So, all right, so let's take that as read. Then, therefore, you have to say, well, why did he say it? He would say he said it because he'd been trying to see Nigel Farage for dinner, bizarrely, or lunch or something. And we know Nigel Farage is not averse to the odd dinner or lunch. I mean, I've had many of them myself. You know, he's usually at Boysdale every Tuesday. It's not that hard to find him. But if he's been avoiding Rupert Lowe, then clearly there's an issue, isn't there?
And this is an allegation or a criticism, shall I say, that's been made of of Farage and leadership for some time.
Yeah.
Ben Habib, former deputy leader, has made a similar point, which is that it's a bit too much of a kind of top-down operation. A lot of the even high-ranking figures, people who are prominent MPs or deputy leaders or whatever, not having much input on policy. But I suppose the argument from the other side is that this is what has got them to this particular point. They're on quite a tight ship.
Yeah.
Set around the leader and now the chairman.
Right.
So again, it's just it's very much a kind of which side do you want to?
But exactly right. But the point that many people have been saying over the weekend, and lots of my listeners and viewers and people on my Twitter feed are sort of in despair, saying, you know, what is going on here? You know, is Nigel Farage really the guy that got rid of Ben Habib, who got rid of people before when he was in UKIP? He got rid of other people, you know, previous to that. The Brexit Party, he wanted everything to be done the way he wanted to do it, you know. And he seems to be, or they seem to be doing, you know, unforced errors every single day now, whereby people who would have wanted reform to be the government are saying, I'm never voting reform again. You know, it's, you know, when something starts happening and you can see that it's happening and people start saying, we've had it with this lot, you know, they don't even know how to run a bath. They're doing massive damage to themselves. Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't make any sense.
No, absolutely, and I think that's true, again, regardless of which side people might want to take in this particular spat. It's clear that the more that this story becomes about kind of reform and internal chaos and so on, that's really not the message they wanted to be sending out at this point. They wanted to be building themselves up, looking like a kind of opposition in waiting, almost all the rest of it. And so, regardless of what the rights and wrongs of this are, regardless of what the true facts are as it will emerge, this is clearly not helping them.
No, I mean, the way they're operating at the moment, and we saw Richard Tice yesterday doing the rounds, trying to explain what was going on, not very convincingly, I'm afraid, and I would say the same to him if he was here today. He's not able to come on today for us, apparently. He's not feeling very well, so they say. But the point is that, you know, in the end, they're doing themselves a very massive disfavour, and they're looking like a bunch of amateurs. Yeah, and I think for a lot of people, that is disappointing, to say the least. And if it's just because they are amateurs, that's one thing. But if it is because Nigel Farage can't handle somebody in the party who might be a threat to him, or somebody who might be in some ways, you know, slightly more interesting than him, he's got a problem.
And it's that kind of, I guess, that tension that's always been at the centre of the whole project, which is that the reason that reform is on the map is because of Nigel Farage.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
That is absolutely true, but at the same time, you do need to build out, don't you? You need to be able to have a kind of broader movement, broader set of characters. And is this another example of him not being able to do that? That's the question.
I mean, I spoke to Harry Cole, who did the Drive Time show on Thursday, and he had an interview with Farage. He had Farage on, and he was clearly quite spiky when it was put to him that basically, you know, reform were a protest party. He obviously didn't like it. And he's very charming, Nigel Farage, very smart guy. You know, I like him personally. But the longer this goes on, the worse their prospects are. And getting closer to the May elections, which are not very far away now, you know, you wonder whether some people are just going to withdraw their votes and go, do you know what, they're not what I thought they were.
And especially because they had so much momentum kind of coming up into this. I mean, it was genuinely looking like they could start to kind of nudge up against that ceiling that had been applied to them by so many people who sort of suggested they're never going to get any higher than they did at the election. And what the message they wanted to be sending out at this point was that we are a serious party. I mean, it's still a very, very small operation, and that's something that they've been clearly trying to address. But if the story becomes internal chaos, I think particularly after the past few years of kind of Tory infighting and chaos on such a catastrophic scale, the moment that the electorate feel like they're being reminded of that is probably not a good thing for them.
No, I don't think so. So we'll see how it plays out. You know, there are some who think that, you know, look, it would all probably get sorted out in the wash. You know, a week from now we won't be talking about it anymore, you know, and maybe it'll just be a bump in the road. And let's hope that that's the case, because what we don't need right now is to give any fuel to the fire of the main two parties, Labour and the Conservatives, to say, well, look at these jokers, you know, they don't even know how to organise their own, you know, players. And that was very much the conversation that was being had over the weekend with people like Laura Kunsberg, who said, you know, there's only 5 MPs, you can't control them. You know, what chance have you got of controlling 200 of them?
Yeah, it does. It's been a open goal for those two parties, absolutely.
Totally has. But let's talk about a few other things as well, because, of course, you know, what you might call the traditional mainstream parties have had a pretty bad weekend as well. Rachel Reeves gave an interview, and I don't know why I don't know what it is about the kind of political establishment in this country, and I include in that some political correspondents, political kind of journalists. And Beth Rigby decided to do an interview with Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's a woman, this is amazing, and trying to make her look sort of soft, like some kind of actual human being, which she clearly isn't, right? And here she is talking about pets at home.
I was going to ask you, because obviously the Prime Minister bought his children the Siberian kitten Prince when he became Prime Minister and they moved to number 10. Did you buy your children any pets?
Yeah, we've got a cat as well.
Did you get a cat?
Yeah, I held out for 11 and a bit years of being a mum to get a pet. We had a couple of fish before, but they didn't survive.
So you also bought a cat?
Yes, there is a reason why everyone in this building has cats.
There are loads of mice.
There's a few. It's
your kid's
a little rescue kitten. I've actually really taken to it. During the budget, it was obviously a massive week for me because I was left alone with the cat because my husband took the kids away from half term. So I know everyone thinks, the budget was a big moment, but it's actually keeping a kitten alive for a week as someone who's never had any responsibility for pets before, really.
I mean, this is what passes with journalism now, right? Oh, did you have a cat? I'll tell you what, there's a reason why people in the party of government have cats, because they're evil. Because people who have cats are strange. People are normal if they have dogs, right? Dogs are proper pets. I'm sorry, I may be dividing the nation here. Dogs are proper pets. Cats are not pets. Cats actually control you. And that's why Rachel Reeves and the ridiculousness of her interview there with Beth Rigby exposes that, right? And also the thing that people forget is that she's basically admitted there to killing the fish. Yep. The fish have died. So she can't even look after fish, right? She has goldfish in the house, they drop dead. That's what happens because she has the touch of the opposite of Midas, in my view.
I'd also put out this message that she struggles to keep a kitten alive, for too long. Yeah, it's in charge of the nation's finances. It's not the kind of message you want to send out.
It's really not.
But what is these soft soap interviews?
Yeah, why do they do these interviews?
I mean, I know there's probably always been an element of this, but since this government came in particular, certain sections of the media have covered them like kind of halfway between Pravda and smash hits.
Yeah.
It's like these gushing kind of profiles,
exactly.
kind of talking about, wanting to ask about personal life as if they were there from Hello magazine rather than from a supposedly serious broadsheet newspaper or broadcaster. I just think the gushing over this government has been really weird, not least because of how rubbish it's been.
I know, because it's not as if you've got anything good to say to them. It's like, if you did have this kind of messianic figure, heaven forbid, sorry Nigel, Tony Blair or Barack Obama, the first black president of the United States, or the first woman president of the United States, and you sort of go, how did you get here? What did you do? But this lot have made a complete absolute dog's breakfast of everything. Why would you give them the soft soap routine?
Why indeed, unless you were just trying to sort of run interference for them on some level. But what's fascinating is both Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves, if they were trying to kind of soften their image with the public and look more relatable, they're really bad at it. They can't do that kind of soft soap.
Imagine if they wanted to do that interview with Keir Starmer. So, Keir, did you buy any children? Did you buy any pets for your kids? All right. He'd be hopeless, wouldn't he?
They can't do that kind of bonhomie thing.
No,
so I don't know why they try.
Because they're not normal people. They're not normal.
Certainly don't come across
why haven't you got a dog? I mean, at least Rishi Sunak had a dog. Even Joe Biden, I think, had a dog. I mean, one of the things that people say about Donald Trump, which is a negative, is that he doesn't have a dog. He doesn't have a pet of any kind.
And that hasn't put you off?
Hasn't put me off him, no, because I'd rather he'd had nothing than a cat.
Got you.
Seriously. If he had a cat, then I'd be really worried. Anybody who has a cat is not to be trusted, in my view. And I include in that Peter Cardwell. 6:18, this is Talk.
form are fighting like rats in a sack. There's only 5 of them. They'd fit in the back of a London taxi, yet they're tearing each other apart. And as Rupert Lowe admitted, he said out loud last week what we all know already, which is that they're not a serious party. They've got good slogans.
They're beating you in the polls.
They're
consistently beating you in the polls.
They are a protest party with no real policies, and that is what Rupert Lowe pointed out last week. And he got stabbed in the back almost immediately for it. They are fighting like rats in a sack and don't have any serious ideas for the future of our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 21 minutes past 6. Linda says this, and I think she speaks for an awful lot of people. I wish all the bitching would stop and they all just got on with sorting out this damn country. What's left of it, of course. Well, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Let's get a voice note from James on Lindsay Hoyle.
Good morning, Mike. Just regarding Lindsay Hoyle, I think that's his name, isn't it? The Speaker of the House. The man that's supposed to be holy of holy. God, I didn't realise how much money he'd been spending. Order, order. I'm probably quite late to the party on that one as well, I imagine. And also, Mike, your Lucinda Ardern impression of the New Zealand ex-Prime Minister is spot on. I love that. Don't talk to your koalas because they might have coronavirus. Cheers, Mike. Have a great one.
James, thank you very much indeed. Yeah, Lindsay Hill back in the news. We talked about him last week, of course, because it turned out that he spent something like £250,000 flying around the world, staying in the most remarkable and beautiful hotels, including one in the Cayman Islands, which I looked up yesterday, which is some kind of hotel and spa. You know, top prices, around £1,000 a night. But they've got lovely, lovely beaches, and it's very, very nice. It turns out that basically he was last night facing calls for an investigation into his extravagant travel expenses. As it emerged, he's taken his wife on several working trips. Why? We were told that basically the reason that he was going on all these trips was because he was being an ambassador for the parliamentary sort of committee, and if you like, the parliamentary estate even, the House of Commons and the business of democracy and all of that. As previously stated, said the spokesman, to further bolster transparency and accountability, he has asked officials to ensure future travel arrangements are signed off by the cross-party House of Commons Commission. So in other words, I've been rumbled, I'm not going to do it anymore. I mean, Tom, what is wrong with these people? Who do they think they are, that they can just swan around the country? I mean, I said this to the audience last week. I've been to Singapore. It didn't cost me £23,000, but it cost us, apparently, £23,000 to send Lindsay Hoyle.
So that's one of the things about this. I mean, aside from the outrageousness of relying so much on taxpayers' money to kind of go on all of these jollies.
Yeah.
It's clearly not being done on a budget, is it? I mean, one of the elements in this Mail story is that £38,000 of rail fares have been spent in the last 3 years. How many trains is he getting on?
Yeah,
This doesn't make any sense. He must be doing nothing else.
I mean, he's literally just on the train all the time.
Yeah.
You know, just
back and forth,
forwards. I mean, people say he gets on at Stockport, I think. Yeah. Because he lives somewhere near there and comes down to London. But yeah, it is just.
I mean,
ridiculous.
given how bad and expensive the railways are, maybe that is more understandable than we realise.
It's just not right.
Critics
crazy. Questioned whether his wife's attendance on what was supposed to be official taxpayer-funded work trips was necessary, and whether it was possible to keep her expenses completely separate. Well, I presume he's not getting her a separate room. Yeah. I presume she's staying in the same room as him, so he thinks that's fine. But it's not fine. You know, apparently, Lady Hoyle's travel expenses during a trip there into Gibraltar in 2021 were paid for by the university. 3 staff also went on the trip, for which Lindsay billed taxpayers more than £4,000 for a trip to the University of Gibraltar. He's obviously just having a good time, isn't he?
And also because
it's not right.
And the reason he seems to be there is because he's got like a position as Chancellor of the university there and whatnot, but that's got nothing to do with his job as
Also, I mean, I said this,
you
know, there was a time when I worked in Fleet Street and you would get invited by various tourist boards to come and visit the country. And in fact, the time I did go to Singapore, it was at the request of the Singapore Food Festival or something like that, and they pay for the trip. Yeah. So why are we paying for it?
No, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And I know that previously he was holding on to this kind of excuse as my kind of ambassadorial role as a kind of representative of Parliament.
Cobblers.
That I don't understand why people from all around the world want to visit Parliament and have a look around. It's not as if we need to promote the idea of it to other people.
No.
But this stuff where he's clearly going on these trips for other reasons, you know, like his position at this particular university. The idea that the taxpayer would be billed for any of that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Absolutely ridiculous. Let's have a voice note from Mark on reform.
Good morning, Mike and Tom. It's Mark in Lancashire. There's lots of talk about reform being nothing without Nigel Farage. Well, both Nigel Farage and reform would be nothing without us, without the members, the public, the electorate, the people who made him. We made this party. We made Nigel Farage what he is by supporting him, by believing what he says, by following him. And all that's going to change unless he starts telling the truth and behaving properly like a government in waiting, not treating us like a bunch of gullible idiots, which he is doing now. He thinks if he waves his arms around and says, frankly, enough times, then we're going to keep believing what he says. That's just not true. We're not idiots. We can see what's going on. Rupert Lowe has been speaking for us. He's been the only MP out of 650 who's been talking about deporting illegal immigrants, and now they're saying we can't even have that one. Well, I'm sorry, but I don't accept that. Not at all.
See, it's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of people have been saying this over the weekend, and I've been following it on social media, on X and on Facebook as well. An awful lot of people who have gone to reform in the hopes that they were going to be the answer are starting to question whether or not reform have got what it takes. And that's really dangerous, I think, for Nigel Farage.
No, and any political party always has to remember that it is fundamentally about your voters, it is fundamentally about your members. It's very easy for a party of any stripe, whether they're established or more insurgent, to kind of get caught up in the kind of what goes on at the top, the kind of soap opera stuff. But that's always fatal, I think, particularly if you're trying to break through. You know, it's impossible to overstate.
And the fact that it's all being done in public is very unedifying, as people say all the time. You know, even as late as kind of, you know, about 9, 10 o'clock last night, you know, Rupert Lowe was saying, you know, it's disgraceful what's being said about me. It's disgraceful that I haven't been able to have a meeting with Nigel Farage. I've asked for one. I've asked to have dinner with him. He says, I'm learning, I'm hearing that people are putting around the story that I'm suffering from some kind of early onset dementia, which is why I'm behaving the way that I am, which he denies completely. He denies all the allegations made against him. I mean, it's just an absolute horror show for them, isn't it?
And it's also going to run and run because they've got this kind of KC investigation which is going to run its course. The fact that this is actually, there's this complaint with the police as well.
Well, that's the other thing. I mean, it makes them look as well like the party that they're not supposed to be. You know, Lee Anderson has sort of built his reputation on the fact that, you know, they're all about common sense. They're all about, you know, we don't report people to the police. We don't suddenly report people to the HR department. Suddenly they're all over it. I mean, they're starting to look at the BBC, for God's sake. You know, let's get the police involved. Why? What for? What?
And there's been a lot that police allegation that's been passed on to them about supposed threats from Rupert, or alleged threats, I should say, from Rupert. I think also because of the kind of chronology of it, and because of the fact that those complaints were referring to messages which were before Christmas. Again, all of this is just starting to tumble out, isn't it?
Call me old-fashioned, but, you know, is it really a threat to Zia Yusuf? Did he say, I'll knock your block off? Did he say, you know, if you come anywhere near me, I'll give you a smack in the face? I mean, who knows? But it's probably not a police matter, is it?
I mean, we'll find.
Surely not.
It would have to be pretty out there, you know, for it to be, surely. But I guess we'll find out when it actually runs its course.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, we'll keep an eye on it. But I would love to hear from what you've got to say, because I know that an awful lot of people that listen to this show and watch this show rely on reform and thought that reform were the answer. And to see them kind of having these ridiculous arguments in public must be very, I don't know, unedifying, which is one word. Just disappointing is another word. You know, Nigel Farage has not been on this show for quite a long time. We've asked to have him on the show from one week to the next. He was on a talk with Harry Cole on Thursday. We're very happy for him to have done that, and we're very happy to have got a relationship with reform. But, you know, it's been disappointing, certainly from my point of view, that Nigel Farage hasn't been on this show for as long as I can remember. I think the last time he was on was maybe October or something of last year, and that's not really good enough. You know, this is the premiere show. You know, I know that he occasionally works for another network, and I know that he occasionally does a show there. That's not the issue. The issue is that he should come to this show, which represents more people who vote for reform than any other show in Britain, okay? And yet, he hasn't done it. I don't know why. We haven't had an explanation as to why. I've had a few words with some of the people that represent him, and we've had a few, shall we say, robust exchanges. They haven't reported any police for them, but there we are. Maybe they will now. I just think it's disappointing. That's all. I want to hear from you. 0344 499 1000. Has he got a pet cat? is the one question I would ask. I'm already getting a lot of trouble. I'm already in very bad trouble from people going, we're going to switch the radio off if you don't stop going on about cats. Listen, I just like dogs, OK? I've had a cat. I've had plenty of cats in my life, but I like a dog better. And I don't trust people with cats. Simple as that. I'll tell you who else I don't trust. David Lammy, right? David Lammy is a man who is a complete idiot, right? Not only did he give money to UNRWA, an organisation which is clearly associated with terrorism in Gaza, clearly associated with the attacks of October the 7th, he's also given money to Syria. More than £50 million he released to Syria. Syria is now in the firing line because it looks as though they are doing some really, really awful things with some of the members of their own country. People are being shot dead, people are being tortured, people are being harassed and harangued by the new leaders of Syria, who of course are former members of Al-Qaeda. Have a look at this though from Lammy, who thinks that he should now sort of big himself up for travelling around the world. Here's another freebie merchant.
We're here in Tokyo, at home.
That's that bloke Jonathan Reynolds, who used to be a solicitor. Oh, sorry, he wasn't a solicitor, he just told everyone he was a solicitor. Do you think he told everyone in Japan, you know, I used to be a solicitor, you know, and
thought he'd maybe get away with it.
I made the choice to become a politician because it was better for my work-life balance. You wouldn't make that sort of thing up, would you? Oh, no, he did. No, he did say that, didn't he? I mean, these people are utter planks. Why are they selling fighter jets to Japan? They're not at war with anyone.
Also, what's with these videos? That looked like a kind of advert for a credit card or something.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand why they feel the need to make these kinds of...
I know.
I don't know who that's for.
Who's putting the music on them and who's picking the music? It's so lame, isn't it?
It's really weird. But it's like they've got a kind of... that video kind of screamed of, we are doing something useful.
Yeah.
Honest.
We are spending... Meanwhile, David Lammy, up to now, £1 million he's charging for private jet flights all over the world, where he keeps going. And as I say, the main business of what he did this weekend was freeing up 50 million quid to a despotic, ghastly, bloodthirsty leadership of a country called Syria, who deposed Bashar al-Assad, who was, let's face it, a pretty awful man, but yet they've replaced him with somebody even worse, who's a former terrorist. And you just kind of go, what? Why have you given them 50 million quid?
It's just fascinating as well, like how... Because remember when they came to power, this Islamist group, HTS, there was all this discussion, you heard Labour figures on the airwaves talking about maybe we'll have to remove their terrorist designation so that we can start to sort of do business with them. There was this instant consensus that unlike every other Islamist group that had been seen as the more moderate option, or that they've changed, or that they've turned the page.
Oh yeah, they're fine now.
In this case, it'll work out fine. You just think
they're
what
killing
short
Christians, they're killing Druze, they're actually killing other Islamists who they don't agree with, and they're going around the streets with machine guns, literally gunning people down.
And it's it was a bit like when the Taliban came back to power, and people were like, no, they've changed. They're a bit, they're softer, gentler version. Now. There was like that with HTS.
How do you know that they've changed? Because Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart and their podcast have been out there to interview them. And there was a great moment where I read, there was one of the great tweets of the weekend, was a picture of Alistair Campbell standing next to this guy, you know, the Syrian leader whose name escapes me. And he said, how shameful that this man, the new leader of Syria, will stand with a war criminal and have his picture taken. But it is, I mean, the irony is ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's
especially
just
because
mad.
he used to, because Al Jilani or Al Shara, what he's called himself now.
Al Jilani, that's right.
He's, you know, the fact that he was formerly in Al Qaeda, and you've got Alistair Campbell there.
Yeah.
You just think...
And Rory Stewart, and people were like, you know, make sure you find a woman that looks at you like Rory Stewart looks at a terrorist, you know, former terrorist organiser of the death squads of Libya, of Syria, rather. I mean, it's just incredible.
No,
incredible.
Absolutely. Such short memories.
Yeah, absolutely right. Coming up, we're going to talk about a few other stories as well, because there's plenty of them going on. I stood for reform at the last council election, says Sean. If Rupert Lowe's correct and reform are against mass deportation of illegal immigrants, I've had it with them, says Sean from Bridlington. And Kathy says, morning, Mike, what a lovely view we had yesterday morning, waking up on our weekend away, watching the sunrise, and there you were with us. A great show as always. Keep up the good work, says Kathy in Portsmouth. I'm not sure, I think it might have been Plank of the Week you were watching there. And here's one from Celia, who says, I think Ben Habib would be a better leader. And again, that's more grist to the mill for an awful lot of people who thought that Ben Habib was a good guy, and why is he no longer in reform? And if they're going to chuck out Ben Habib and Rupert Lowe, what is going on? That is the question everybody's asking.
No, certainly. And it's that fundamental problem, isn't it? Where, it's always within a party, you're always going to want to enforce a level of discipline. There can always be a situation where people are not necessarily useful for the leader. There is also situations where people get a bit big for their boots, which is what the allegation has been made at Rupert Lowe in this situation. That's not useful either, but I think a lot of people, because they're not privy to the internal discussions and what are the kind of fundamental facts of the matter, they're just striking around and wondering what a mess this is.
Yes, it really is. Lisa says this, and I'm going to read this out. She says, very disappointed in you this morning, Mike. Seems the mainstream media are intent on destroying reform, and it seems so are you. Very sorry, as you usually give an even account of events. I'm giving an even account of events, right? It seems to me that they seem to be destroying themselves. I'm not destroying them. I'm asking the question, what is going on? And I don't understand why they're behaving the way that they are. If you, Lisa, think that I'm doing something wrong, then by all means call me and let's talk about it. Let's get a voice note from Glenn.
Morning, Mike. Glenn from Suffolk here. All this business with reform, Farage and Lowe. I mean, I suppose the truth lies somewhere in the middle, but really, I agree with a hell of a lot of what Rupert Lowe says, particularly on immigration, but I think he made a big mistake by doing that interview with the Mail. I mean, this could ensure that we've got another sort of 10 years of Labour, which, well, that will just finish this once great country off. Have a good day. Cheers. Bye.
Good to hear from you, Glenn. Thanks very much indeed. Coming up, we're going to talk about a great many other stories as well. Foreign criminals getting ankle tags, apparently, and that will help. And also, a man that came into this country on a small boat who's vowed to kill all Jews. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows what he's going to do. Nobody knows where he's going to go. That doesn't sound great to me. We'll talk about that. Coming up next with me and Tom Slater.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. Julie Hartley-Brewer will be back. She's recovered from the lurgy that was giving her a jip last week. We'll find out what exactly is going on. We've been setting the cat amongst the pigeons this morning with my conversations about cats and dogs. Chris says, I have a cat and he's tough, independent, loyal and can fight dogs. So wind your neck in, Mike, on cats, or I'm leaving Britain. Yeah, right. One from Rich in Dudley. Morning, Mike. I'm with you on the cat front. The first and last cat I had sank its claws into my face and I'm sure it was smirking. Dogs all day long. And Stuart says, if you like picking up dog poo and sliding it into plastic bags 3 or 4 times a day, as opposed to opening and closing the front door a couple of times a day for a pussycat, then I guess you like dogs. I mean, people are getting very carried away with this. I'm not trying to cause World War III. I'm just saying, you know, it strikes me that Rachel Reeves is the kind of person that would have a cat. She's also the kind of person that can't keep fish alive because she kills things, including the economy, by the way. Thanks very much indeed. Let's talk, Tom Slater's here, about the front page of the Times. £250 a year off your bill for living near new pylons, right? Thousands of residents living near electricity pylons could be given up to £2,500 off their bills as ministers overhaul planning rules to push through new developments and home building. I mean, if the government's going to start bribing its own, you know, voters in order to do things which they don't want to do, I mean, where does that end?
No, exactly.
You know, how would you like to live next door to a load of migrants in a hotel? That would be 500 quid.
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because these ideas have been toyed with before, because how do you get over kind of local opposition to big infrastructure things, which aren't the most aesthetically pleasing things in the world?
Right.
And we all know there's going to be obvious kind of opposition, particularly in rural communities and so on, to this sort of thing going up. Is this the answer? Will it necessarily work? Particularly because the strength of opposition is often such that I don't think they'd even be bought off necessarily that easily.
No. So and also, it's all very well if you buy off sort of half the people that are underneath the pylons and then the other half don't want to be bought off, you still can't put the pylons anywhere near them, can you? I remember back in the day, I think it was in the 90s, I lived in Wiltshire, very rural part of Wiltshire, and people were being paid or offered money to put up a mobile phone mast on their property. You know, farmers and people like that, because, you know, if they had a couple of acres or a couple of 100 acres, they could put a mobile phone mast up and get paid a sort of statutory amount of money every single year. And a lot of them did it because they thought, well, why not? You know, but I think it's bad policy, generally speaking, isn't it?
Well, especially if it just feels like they're kind of trying to get around the fact that sometimes if you do have kind of critical infrastructure that you think needs to be built, sometimes you do need to just find ways of just overruling that. There is this such thing as the greater good that needs to be addressed. But are these little incentives and trying to kind of pay people off the way to get around it? Probably not. But we'll see how this pans out.
And also, I mean, apparently the proposal is intended to reduce opposition to renewable energy, because one of the things that they want to put pylons up for is to try and make sure that there's enough electricity to go around. And we already know there isn't enough electricity to go around because it can't be produced by solar panels, it can't be produced by wind, it has to be produced basically by gas. And at the end of the day, that is not green, it's not efficient.
And it's one of those things, because there is this, you know, embrace of we want everyone to be driving electric cars, and because we want to kind of decarbonise the grid and so on, you still need to generate that energy somehow. Like if you want an electric car in every driveway, it's not just going to be, you know, it needs to be charged somehow. So I think, again, it's that combination of, like, if people feeling like they're going to have to kind of put up with new infrastructure is one thing. If it's for this kind of ridiculous green plan, people are going to be even less likely.
And most of the reasons why people are buying electric cars is because they get a break. It's because they get a tax break from it. Their companies can buy them. Company cars have been electric for a long time, but that's beginning to wear off now, because second-hand electric cars are not worth a fag end. Nobody wants to buy them because you don't know how long they're going to last. And so at the end of the day, all of these tax benefits that you get from buying an electric car, as they start to wear off, and as the government starts to put road tax on them, as the government starts to actually, you know, take off the benefits from buying them, nobody's going to buy them.
No, exactly. Also, the vast majority of people buy cars second-hand anyway, so it's this sort of thing where, well, you know, yes, they are quite expensive, but at the same time, here is this incentive. It's still, unless you get to a situation in which that isn't the case, that people are kind of able to buy them. And as you say, at the moment, it is purely people buying them as a bit of a status symbol, or it's because they drive for a living, and that's become what the new fleet at work is, are all electric, because there's... I mean,
I was watching Laura Kunsberg the other day on Sunday. Dan Snow, is it, who's the historian, was on, you know, very woke, very, you know, sort of wide awake sort of person, likes to think of himself as, you know, left of centre. He confessed to having a Tesla without actually giving away the name of the company, which was obviously churning him up inside, because, you know, now it's run by Elon Musk, the mad right-winger, you know, and he was thinking, he was going, I may have to, you know, get rid of the car, because obviously, you know, I don't want to support what the owner of the car says.
Maybe this will actually turn all of the sort of lovies off of electric cars, is the fact that Tesla is so sort of dominant in that. You know, they'll happily go back to gas guzzlers.
Oh, no, I don't know what to do. Unbelievable. How about this, though? Also on the front page of the Times, we should avoid avocados. This is according to Alan Titchmarsh, famous gardener and broadcaster. He doesn't want us to eat avocados. What's he got to do with him?
I mean,
sorry,
exactly. Like,
you know,
what he could keep his opinions of what we eat to ourselves. But I mean, there's always this argument, isn't there?
Maybe you shouldn't eat Cornish pasties, mate. I don't know. You know, I don't tell you what to eat. Why are you telling me? Bugger off.
That was another big schism, in the same way that, like, you know, Tesla electric car, but at the same time Elon Musk runs it. It's like avocados, very popular, very kind of in, or have been for a long time, but at the same time there's always been this argument about how supposedly climate-wise they're not necessarily the best option if you're so concerned about, you know, the climate miles of your food. Avocados are always one that come up.
And just to show you what an idiot he is, right, he actually says that the alternatives are better, including cornflakes, Weetabix and Shreddies. I mean, is he actually having a laugh?
I mean, apart from the fact that people
massive American companies, right, who rape the land in order to steal all the wheat from America, if you want to go down that particular road, and monopolise the price of it, and then sell it and produce some of it in Britain.
It's an odd,
how is that any better?
It's an odd one.
It really is.
And also, you know, it's not as if the only thing those things have in common is that you might eat them at breakfast. It's not as if, like, you know, you have an avocado one day. It's like, you know what, have some Shreddies instead. That will scratch the same itch.
I mean, I mean, if you, I mean, genuinely, I mean, I don't care if you want to eat avocados on toast. I don't care if you're a Gen Zer or a parent. But, you know, I would guarantee you that you're probably better off eating avocado health-wise than a bowl of Shreddies.
Controversial point according to Titchmarsh.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're all about controversy this morning. You know, we don't like cats and you shouldn't eat Shreddies. Simple. This is Morning Glory. We'll be back after this.
Nigel Farage is no patriot. He's spent decades wrapping himself in the flag, but doesn't love Britain. He doesn't love working people. And you've just got to look at Reform's voting record. They voted against the employment bill. They voted against the renters bill. They voted against our asylum bill, which will bring in counter-terror powers to take on the smuggling gangs. And Reform want people to pay for their healthcare. All of those things are anti-British.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. Tom Slater's here with us from Spiked Online, of course, as well. Claire says this morning, Mike, am I missing something? There seems to be no voice of Richard Tice and all these endorsements for Rupert Lowe being a possible replacement leader of Reform. Surely Richard Tice should be in line to be the leader. Well, it's like they say in football. There is no vacancy right now for a leader of Reform because Nigel Farage is the leader of Reform. And I said this last week when I was talking to Harry Cole about it. You know, without Nigel Farage, there would be no Reform. There would not be a political party. Let's get a voice note from Marge.
Morning, Mike. I hope you're well today. So I just wanted to let you know, I'm a girl that grew up in Northern Ireland. I never voted in my life until Reform came about. I voted for them in the hope that they were going to do something good for this country. I'll never vote for them again because I don't believe Rupert Lowe is what they say he is. He just doesn't come across that kind of man.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I mean, Les Stevenson says this. Morning, Mike. Great start to the show and good to see the excellent Tom Slater with you. There you are. Rupert Lowe, the facts are this. 7 months into a meteoric rise, Rupert Lowe chose to break ranks and attack the Farage and the entire party. Lowe wants to professionalise the party, he says, so they create 400 constituency branches. He wants party democracy, so Reform change structure and remove Farage total control. He wants a front bench with only 5 MPs. We are 4 years out from a general election. The party is evolving into what it needs to be. Lowe has managed to give the opposition numerous new attack lines and sabotage the May local elections. So, I mean, there's people on both sides of this argument. Some who think that Nigel Farage is doing the right thing, some who think that Rupert Lowe is doing the wrong thing, some who think that it's all really unnecessary and, as I say, unedifying. And it does seem to be surprising, does it not, that so far into their success, because they have been incredibly successful. You know, they're leading in the polls more so than any new party ever has. You know, they've been refreshing, they've been brilliant. The questions Lee Anderson's asked in Parliament, some of the things Richard Tice has done, you know, Nigel Farage as well, they've been great. You know, so why kibosh it? It doesn't make any sense.
No, and it's one of those things where, you know, who you apportion blame to comes down to who people believe in this particular spat, who people might have been more positive about previously. Until we know all the facts, it's going to be really difficult to apportion blame. But as you say, the overriding thing is, the momentum was really with them up until this. They were clearly kind of landing blows on the government. There was this kind of claim when they first won that it's like they've only got a few MPs. If anything, Farage going into Parliament is going to kind of muzzle him because he's not going to be out on the airwaves as much. All of that's turned out to be nonsense. They've basically been the story in British politics.
They have.
And
they've done brilliantly. So, you know, why on earth would they want to sabotage it?
Well, it's also one of those things. It's the unfortunate nature of political parties, isn't it? It's how you manage to contain that and do as much of it behind closed doors as possible. But I suppose on the leadership side, they're going to say, we're not the one who gave that interview to the Mail. We're not the one who brought all this out into the open. And that would be the point they'd probably...
But he will say, and as he has said, you know, the reason I did that was because I've been frustrated at not being able to be given access to the sort of the seat of power, if you like. And every time I've asked for a meeting with the leader, I don't get one. So, you know, it's weird. Ed from Thurrock says this: I'm not surprised about what's happening in Reform. I never believed for a moment that Farage had this country's interests at heart. He set out to destroy the Conservatives and in doing so delivered the country to the Labour Party in exchange for 5 MPs. He is a self-centred, selfish agitator who's all about the Farage show. He is not fit to be leader and has reached his peak. Watch this space when Robert Jenrick becomes Tory leader and hopefully Mr Lowe joins the Tories. It's over for Reform, I think. I had hopes for them until recent days. I don't agree with that, actually, Ed. And I don't agree with that sort of description of Nigel Farage. I think Nigel is a genuinely talented politician. I think he's really, really good at it, and I think he's fantastic at knowing what people want and identifying the kinds of worries that people have in this world. And you know, I don't quite understand those people who say Rupert Lowe should lead the party. Rupert Lowe, at the end of the day, may be a very estimable guy, but he's not a leader of a political party. You don't just come from nowhere and become that man, do you?
No, and the fact of the matter is that, as you say, the party wouldn't be anywhere without Nigel Farage. That doesn't mean it shouldn't remain, you know, like it shouldn't build out and it shouldn't bring more people in, but that is the facts of the matter. He's a real, you know, like him or loathe him, a once-in-a-generation kind of politician as far as his ability to communicate, his sense of where his voters and sections of the country are. Having the common touch, for lack of a better phrase, I mean, that is something which is so... particularly with this generation of politicians, very lacking.
Totally.
And the fact about Rupert Lowe is, whilst he's obviously very big on X and amongst people who are Reform supporters and Reform curious, they know who he is. I mean, a lot of people will have found out who he is this week. That's the other thing.
Do you think that his endorsement from Elon Musk some weeks ago has sort of sent him over the edge.
I mean, it's hard to speculate, but you couldn't help but feel that maybe that went to his head a little bit. He was being openly talked about by the richest man in the world as the person who should lead the party.
Who should lead the party.
And it's very easy to get delusions of grandeur.
Rather eccentric things that Elon Musk comes out with. Let's talk about a proper story. The Home Office under pressure to reveal the whereabouts of a gun-toting Channel migrant amid fears he may have gone AWOL in the UK. Well, guess what? They've all gone bloody AWOL. Nobody knows where any of them are. But this particular guy is pictured in the Mail today with a machine gun and the history of saying that he would like to end the existence of Israel.
The mind boggles, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Especially, it's so obvious that if you just allow the small boats crossings to carry on completely undeterred, that people do just disappear into the country. That's a phenomenon. And the fact is, there is going to be a non-negligible portion of those people who will be wishing harm on sections of the community, particularly Jews. I mean, has all these videos making these kind of sickening anti-Semitic rants. And it's worth remembering that it wasn't that long ago, shortly after October the 7th, we had that terror attack in Hartlepool. It was kind of hushed over at the time, and then we kind of found out the details later, where you had a Moroccan illegal migrant, asylum seeker, who, again, had sort of spent years floating around Europe before ending up in the UK after COVID, who became obsessed with October the 7th and then went out and stabbed a 70-year-old man on the street because of that, because he was so inspired by that.
We had that awful incident in North London where people were driving a pickup truck through a very Jewish area near Golders Green, Finchley Road, shouting death to Israel and urging people to rape Israeli women. They ended up getting let off, by the way, by the Metropolitan Police, who didn't think that in the end it was worth pursuing. Despite the fact they were on a loud hailer shouting these anti-Semitic tropes throughout the day.
It's absolutely incredible, and you can understand why British Jews are so alarmed at the moment, because not only has there been this kind of rising tide of anti-Semitism kind of internally in the country amongst the sections of the citizenry, but also you're now allowing a kind of open door to, anti-Semitic terrorists, effectively, to come into the country and potentially do harm to them. I don't understand why the government doesn't recognise they need to get a grip on this. I mean, the Tories recognised they had to and couldn't, but the Labour just pretend like it's not really an issue almost.
Believe it or not, and this will be comedy value only at the moment because I don't think I'm going to promote it at all, the Tory party are today going to unveil some kind of new policy on immigration, in which they're going to call for a clampdown on the illegal migration problem that we have in this country. Just checked notes, 14 years they were in, didn't seem to do very much about it.
No, and it's just anything they say
make this
now.
Stuff up,
I mean, even you've got quotes from Robert Gendrick here being like, this is outrageous.
You think cats as well.
They were also all of the big hitters in this current Tory opposition were in government not that long ago as well. So it's not even if they were the kind of new brooms and whatever.
I know.
It's very difficult.
I mean, Gendrick actually, I'd take an exception for, because he at least did have the decency to resign as immigration minister, because he said, this is not working and they really need to do better. But what can you do? I wonder, says Sam, if Richard III will be adding vet and cattery manager to her CV. Sam in Sheffield. Richard III, of course, is our moniker for Rachel Thieves, because she does look like him. But listen, Tom, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for kicking us off on a Monday. There's a lot going on. We're going to keep the cat versus dog thing going on because, of course, it is ridiculous, as indeed is most of our political world right now. We'll be talking about Ukraine coming up. We'll be talking about Sir Lindsay Hoyle. We'll also be talking about Labour clamping down on benefit scroungers. Are they really going to, though? Will they have any success at it? Let's see. Coming up after the news, lots more on Morning Glory.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened.
I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or far ball, slides it in. agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspects in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to very nearly 3 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. We've got 4 glorious hours of Morning Glory for you every single weekday morning from Monday to Friday. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking to Joanna Bell, political journalist. They're going to be asking her about what she makes of what's going on inside Reform, because an awful lot of you have got an awful lot of faith in this party. An awful lot of you voted for them in the last election. 4 million people, by the way, voted for Reform in the July election last year. They didn't get more than 5 seats, but they did incredibly well to get those 5 seats. The Gang of 5, you might want to call them, have now sort of become the Gang of 4 because Rupert Lowe has apparently fallen out with Nigel Farage and Lee Anderson and Richard Tice and the other bloke whose name nobody can remember. The point is that, you know, this is no longer the party of revolution. This is now a party that has been stalled. Unfortunately, somebody said to me, I think it was Lisa in the last hour, said that I'm attacking them and trying to put them out of business. I'm not. I'm actually supporting them. I'd like to see Reform do well. I'd like to see them do as well as they possibly can. I'd like to see them having a go at running the country, to be honest, after the uselessness of Labour and the Conservatives over the past, 25 years of this particular millennium. You know, since the beginning of the century, we've had nothing but Labour and Conservatives ruining the country. And look where we are now. We are in a dire state. The economy is going down the gurgler. We can't generate any jobs whatsoever. The inflation rates are going up. We're going to have problems with immigration, problems with the health service, problems with policing and crime, problems with all sorts of different parts of the economy, and they just don't work. So we need Reform to work. We need Reform to be good. We need Reform to be honest. We need Reform to be truthful. But they've got to sort this business out. It is absolutely and utterly ridiculous that we are stuck in this kind of, what you might call maelstrom of madness. Also, we're going to talk about Labour because it would appear as though David Lammy's got it wrong yet again. He gave £50 million to Syria. They're now killing Christians. They're now killing Druze. They're killing members of any minority that they don't agree with. The bloke who's running the place used to be in Al-Qaeda. He is a terrorist. He's not a former terrorist, he's a terrorist. It's as simple as that. And David Lammy, of course, thought it was a great idea to unload a bunch of aid money, like he did to UNRWA, the people who helped Hamas on October the 7th to actually carry out their most brutal and ghastly assault on the Israeli population. We'll come back to the Middle East. We'll come back to Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky is off to Saudi Arabia, apparently, today to have a meeting with the Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman. But he's not hanging around to meet up with the Americans, and he's not hanging around to meet up with the Russians. discussion. So we'll see where that all goes. We'll also keep you in touch with what else is going on, and there's plenty of it. Tories are asking the Home Office, do you even know where the gun-toting Channel migrant who has threatened to kill all Jews who came into this country illegally even is? Of course they don't. Meanwhile, we'll talk about avocados while Alan Titchmarsh doesn't want you to eat them. 0344 499 1000 is the number. This is Morning Glory. Of course, we're also talking about dogs and versus cats as well, because it turns out Rachel Reeves has got a cat. She says loads of people around Downing Street have got cats, partly because they need to eat the mice. She's also admitted to killing off fish that her children had as pets. And I'm saying this to you, and I know it's controversial, and I know some of you cat owners aren't going to like it, but I don't trust a person that owns a cat. It's as simple as that. I'm a dog person. Please tell me why you think cats are better. Let's get a voice note from Kate.
Sorry, the dog decided to run off just as I started recording. Good morning, Mike. Kate on the Wirral. Thinking about our visitor that has threatened a large community in our country. Surely the role of government, primary function, to protect its citizens and patrol its borders. Should the worst happen, and let's hope it doesn't, but should it happen, surely at that point there would be some criminal negligence on the part of our government. Just a thought. Hi, Mike. Great show.
That's missing Palestinian Abu Wadi, who apparently came into this country illegally on a Channel dinghy. He was first approached by a Border Force boat when he landed here on Thursday. He uploaded a video of himself on the dinghy in the Channel, basically saying, "Thank God we arrived in Britain." But the Home Office have refused to confirm whether it was aware of his extremist background or whether he is indeed free to roam the streets of the UK. According to Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, Wadi is a dangerous anti-Semite and a threat to national security. So let's just put him up in a hotel somewhere near Nottingham, shall we? And maybe let him wander about, go off to Greggs and get himself a chicken sandwich. Labour has let in over 25,000 people in the last 8 months through small boat crossings. We've got no idea who those people are and if they do pose potentially a serious risk to our citizens. This man is clearly a danger to the public and not the kind of person we want in the UK. Well, if we know he's here and if we know he's been let in, surely they should be rounding him up and kicking him out, shouldn't they? According to his Facebook page, he brandishes various assault rifles. He poses behind the highly explosive artillery shells. He fled Gaza before the October 7th massacres in 2023, but he was a prominent member of the so-called tyre-burning unit, a militant group of Palestinian extremists who regularly hurled firebombs and rocks at Israeli forces manning the Gaza border. He's also filmed himself calling for Allah to punish Jews completely in another sickening video. I mean, if the Daily Mail knows who this guy is, why does the Home Office not, for heaven's sake? 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Joanna Bell, political journalist. She's here this morning, awake very early. Joanna, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So, I mean, this is great, isn't it? You know, we know that we let in people all the time whose identities are kind of kept secret because they chuck their phones into the sea. They don't have any identification documents. We don't know whether they're coming from Syria, from Libya, from Afghanistan, from Iran, from Iraq, you know, or from, you know, Somalia, God knows where. This guy, we know exactly who he is. He's filmed himself coming in last Thursday, and yet he was the one allowed in, and now nobody knows where he's gone.
Well, he's probably holed up in a five-star hotel, as you say, being looked after by the taxpayer.
Yeah.
You know, like you said, he put really, really inflammatory things up on Facebook. There's meant to be an organisation called Prevent that, you know, flags this stuff up and takes people into custody if they're seen to have, you know, links to terrorism. And yet this guy is, you know, a free man walking amongst us. And this was what happened with the Manchester Arena bombing. You've seen the guy from the Southport stabbings. You know, where does it end? You know, we don't feel safe.
No, and neither should we feel safe because, you know, the sense that we have here is that basically the government in this country will welcome anybody from anywhere because they're, you know, fleeing hard times and they're fleeing, you know, difficult situations. But, you know, these are people who want to do bad things to our country.
Well, exactly. And thousands of people, I think, if my figures are correct, I think 1,900 people came in just last week alone. We don't know. Some people are not, you know, registering, they're just going on the run, and who knows, they could be going into terrorist cells in the country and never nobody in the country ever knows who these people are.
Yeah.
And that's the really scary thing. And this is what, you know, the organization that we pay for, Prevent, is meant to prevent. And yet, you know, it's just another attack waiting to happen.
It really is. And meanwhile, you know, we seem to be enabling the Syrians to go around killing loads and loads of people. It turns out that David Lammy just last month opened up a £50 million aid package to Syria. Let's have a look at what he did.
Well, today I'm announcing a £50 million package of support and aid to Syria, and I support the ACBA principles that were agreed yesterday. We want to see a Syrian-led and a Syrian-owned future, and we want one that is representative and inclusive. That is what partners in the region and allies, close allies, signed up to yesterday, and that's what we'll be encouraging. HDS remains a prescribed organisation, but we can have diplomatic contact, and so we do have diplomatic contact, as you would expect. We want to see a representative government, an inclusive government. We want to see...
I mean, this is Lammy, right? Yesterday, he put out this tweet. The reports that large numbers of civilians have been killed in coastal areas in Syria in ongoing violence are horrific. That's the Foreign Secretary, after having handed them 50 million quid. He says the authorities in Damascus must ensure the protection of all Syrians and set out a clear path to transitional justice. I mean, is this bloke the thickest bloke you've ever seen? So he gives a bunch of terrorists a load of money, and then he's surprised when they start killing people.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's history repeating itself. The last time this happened, they gave money and funded ISIS, who ended up killing, you know, thousands of British citizens and soldiers. And it's one of those things that, you know, every time David Lammy does something, it costs the British taxpayer money. I mean, he went to Barbados and suggested that we should pay trillions of reparations to the people in the Caribbean. I mean, the guy has no clue about how screwed up this country is financially. What's he doing? And now he wants to bring people in to kill us and kill the people in Syria. It's ridiculous. He should wait a while. It's very naive of them to throw money at a new government regime where the leader has been in Al-Qaeda, the people responsible for the 9/11 bombings, and then to just throw money at it. I mean, it's absolutely, it's so irresponsible, and it puts people's safety at risk.
Yeah, it totally does. And all that's going to happen is that the Syrians, who don't actually like the new government, because the guy who's come in is basically a former member of Al-Qaeda. His name is Ahmad al-Sharaa. This is a guy who has been famously killing and maiming and injuring all sorts of people, particularly the particular sect of people who were supported by the previous president, Bashar al-Assad. They're going around basically murdering them in the streets. But of course, the difficulty is that, you know, these people get recognised by idiots in this country, like Rory Stewart. Rory Stewart and Alistair Campbell went to interview this guy, Ahmad al-Sharaa, just a couple of months ago. Check this out.
It's strange for me sitting with you because we were both in Iraq together in 2003, but we were on different sides. I was part of the American-British occupation, and you were fighting for Al-Qaeda against the occupation. And I never imagined I would sit down like this to talk to you in this way.
Yeah, isn't it great? Lovely.
Oh my
podcasters. God. I mean, what is wrong with these bloody idiots, right?
It's crazy.
You were fighting for the other side. No, he's a terrorist. He wasn't fighting for the other side. He was a terrorist for the other side.
Yeah, they call Rory Stewart a suicidal empathy. I mean, he's sitting there. The guy looks so dodgy. I mean, they must be laughing at, you know, the people in this country, at how ridiculously stupid they are for even entertaining them.
Yeah, I know. And they think it's a great coup to have managed to go all the way to Syria and to Damascus to interview this bloodthirsty killer who's still bloodthirstily killing people in his own country.
Yeah, and I mean, it's only a few weeks in, and so how worse is it's going to get much worse. You know, that's the way it is. These people that live in Syria are going to be more tormented than they ever were under Assad, and bad in itself.
Exactly right. And still, the question has to be asked. Lord Ali, if you remember, went to visit Bashar al-Assad 2 or 3 times, maybe as many as 4 times, back in 2014. Nobody knows why, but he was doing it at the behest of Ed Miliband, who at the time was trying to stop the British government from bombing Assad, who had poisoned his own people. So there's an awful lot of history with this Labour government now and what went on before in Syria.
Well, yeah, it wasn't Lord Ali the guy that was supplying Keir Starmer and his wife with a wardrobe.
That would be the same one, yeah, and sunglasses and glasses, yep, that's him.
Yeah, I mean, this guy really needs to be investigated and what his actual role is and why the Labour Party are so in his pocket.
Yeah.
You know, it really does need to be investigated because something doesn't add up here.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm gonna finish up with Rachel Reeves, because Rachel Reeves was interviewed in what can only be described as a very soft soap style interview by Beth Rigby from Sky over the weekend. Here she is talking about pets and her kids.
I was going to ask you, because obviously the Prime Minister bought his children the Siberian kitten Prince when he became Prime Minister and they moved to number 10. Did you buy your children any pets?
Yeah, we've got a cat as well.
Did you get a cat?
Yeah, I held out for 11 and a bit years of being a mum to get a pet. We had a couple of fish before, but they didn't survive.
So you also bought a cat?
Yes, there is a reason why everyone in this building has cats.
Are there loads of mice?
There's a few. It's
your kid's
a
cat?
little rescue kitten. I've actually really taken to it. Yeah, during the budget, it was obviously a massive week for me because I was left alone with the cat because my husband took the kids away from half term. So I know everyone thinks, oh, the budget was a big moment, but it's actually keeping a kitten alive for a week because someone who's never had any responsibility for pets before, really.
I don't know about you, Joanna, but I'm slightly concerned when she talks about the fish that didn't survive. I mean, what was it they didn't survive? How can she not keep fish alive? And she's also saying she struggles to keep cats alive. I'm saying, and I said this earlier, much to the chagrin of some cat owners that listen to this show, I don't trust people that own cats. If Starmer's got one and she's got one, there's clearly a problem. Get a bloody dog, get a proper pet.
I mean, it shows a level of empathy to have a pet, that you care for a pet, I think. But
well, not if you let them die.
Well, the fish, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't want to ask.
The fish died.
Yeah, how did they die? Did she just not feed them? Maybe if you can't look after goldfish, then surely how can you look after them?
She probably taxed them out of oblivion.
Yeah, you can't look after the public finances if you can't look after a goldfish, right?
Exactly right. That's my thinking. Are you a cat person?
Okay, I do have a cat, but I also have a dog.
So, that's all right then.
I mean, does that get me off the hook?
Yeah, it gets you off the hook. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I won't put you down as a crazy cat lady. That's good. Well done. Joanna, good to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Joanna Bell, political journalist, has a cat and a dog. You know, the world is separated up into those two different things, right? I'm afraid. And I'm sorry to polarise you, and I'm sorry to anyone who's got a cat who's a good person. I'm just worried. If Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have got a cat, I think that pretty much wipes out anyone making sense of having a cat. Joanna from Salisbury says, morning, Mike. Rachel Reeves' cat had to eat the mice or starve, a bit like the rest of us. Yeah, absolutely right. What's going on with her? Why couldn't she keep the fish alive? She says they didn't survive. What was it, nuclear winter in her house? The fish didn't make it. Oh, sorry. I mean, there's something wrong with people who have no empathy, and I think she's one of them. That's what I'm saying. 19 minutes past 7.
the realisation that people are too sick to work is in itself an issue, and it's a grave issue, and it's an issue for those that are sick, because I think it's difficult to get benefits in this country now. I really do. I think it is.
I think it's easy to be signed. Once you're signed off, I think it's easy.
Well, I don't know. I'm a freelancer. I've never even taken a day off sick.
No, and of course.
And I've got a heart condition that I'm going to have. Yeah. I've got aortic stenosis, so I need to go and get my aortic valve replaced again in the next few months.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 22 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. We have got loads going on this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Can't even begin to imagine what you're thinking as you wake up on Monday morning to what looks like another glorious week. We've had an incredible week of sunshine last week and an incredible weekend of what can only be described as very spring-like weather, which of course is only going to mean one thing: more and more migrants coming across the channel, including this scumbag Abu Wadi, who apparently would like to see the end of Israel. He wants to kill all Jews, and he's currently roaming around Britain, having come here last Thursday, and nobody's even had a thought about where he is. Coming up, we're going to talk to Alp Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch. Let's get a quick voice note, though, from Phil on Reform.
Hi, Phil from Nottingham. I joined Reform and I went to the local constituency meeting when it was set up at the end of last year. And I can tell you there's loads of good people just desperate to make some change for the better. And I just feel desperately sorry for them at the minute. It's just a game of egos.
That is sorry, and that is a thing that people will worry about. Elle in Shropshire says, whatever has gone on in the Reform Party, for whatever reason, the public will want the truth to continue supporting them. No silly Tory infighting again. And when that's done, with the local elections looming, Reform need to get a grip quickly and start doing some serious repairs to any damage caused. This is immediately a priority. Let's hope they have really been listening. Well, I hope they're listening. You know, I wish Reform well, because Reform are the answer to an awful lot of the problems in this country. And when it comes to whether you vote for a single party, whether you vote religiously for one or the other because your parents did, or because their parents did, or because you're working class, or because you're not working class, whatever it is, Reform were going to change the way that people thought about general elections in this country, and they were gearing up to be a real force for change. Coming up to the next election, whenever it may be, if it has to be 2029 or if it has to be before that, you know. And I think an awful lot of people this morning are waking up being very disappointed with them. So we'll be hoping to speak to Reform over the course of this week, OK? At the moment, they haven't given us anybody this morning, but we will be talking to Gawain Towler, who was a very close aide to Nigel Farage, and who will be able to give us, presumably, what the thinking is behind what is going on, even though he doesn't necessarily speak for Reform, but he'll be on later on in the show. Alan in Middlesbrough says, this behaviour from Reform is like watching kamikaze pilots in the Pacific in 1945. Something has gone catastrophically wrong, but allowing this to happen more than raises one's eyebrows about their leadership and management qualities. As a Reform voter, I'm now doubting their ability and broader motives for the very first time. And that is a serious problem for Reform. You guys who listen to this show, who watch this show, who have been with me from the beginning or have just joined relatively recently, know that I'm a very straight shooter, very straight talker. I'm not affiliated with any party. I don't vote for the Tories. I don't vote for Reform. I don't vote for Labour. I don't vote for the Lib Dems or the Scottish Nationalists. I don't do any of that. What I do is I represent you and I tell you what I think. And that's what I'm doing here. Let's talk to Alp Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch, because as luck would have it, no matter who is in charge, it would seem none of them know how to stop the bleeding boats. And Abu Wadi, a ghastly individual who's pictured in the Daily Mail today on page 13, has called for the slaughter of all Jews. He's a former key member of a militant group that has terrorised Israel for years and years and years. Well, guess what? Now he's in Britain, but nobody knows where. Marvellous, isn't it? Alp, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
I mean, we knew that this was going on. We knew that, you know, our week in, week out, we get these characters arriving on our shores whose identities are hidden, whose passports are thrown in the sea, whose phones are thrown in the sea. You know, we don't know who's really coming in, but we do know this guy's coming in because he made a video on Thursday saying that he was coming in, and he was identified very quickly as this bloke Abu Wadi, who is a dangerous and criminal individual. So what is going on?
Well, I think a lot of people are asking that question, Mike. What indeed is going on? That here we are importing danger, importing risks to our own citizens, and the government seems to be unconcerned, frankly. I don't know whether this guy is detained, because the Home Office is not saying, and they don't, admittedly, they don't normally deal with individual cases, but they haven't said, A, that he's not here, and normally after the initial detention, taking in, looking at them, asking them a few questions, and then letting them on their way, pending decision on an asylum application that is bound to come. We don't know if that's happened in this particular case. What should have happened was that, given the evidence available, he should have been arrested and charged, and then after whatever trial he's taken through, refused entry and sent back whence he came, or indeed back to Gaza. I mean, this is not the sort of individual that we should be giving refuge to.
No, exactly right. But doesn't it give the lie to this idea that we sort of have a handle in any way, shape or form on who is coming in by this particular route? And, you know, we know, for example, that there have been terrorist situations in this country which have been carried out and perpetuated by illegal migrants who have arrived on small boats and who have then sought to do us harm.
Wait. There's thousands here who shouldn't be here. Thousands, absolutely thousands, if not millions, frankly, given the number that we estimate are here illegally. A lot of them, we have no idea who they are. You're absolutely right. But then even when it comes to light, we do find out who they are and what they're up to. We still don't get rid of them. Their rights seem to override the right to security and safety of our own people. We give them the benefit of the doubt, if there is any. This is absolutely balmy.
It really is. I've just got a bit of breaking news, Alp. Sorry to interrupt you, and this is important. Heathrow Airport has been hit by major delays. Part of the M4 has been closed and shut down as an electric vehicle has completely been destroyed after bursting into flames inside the tunnel. I presume that's the tunnel that leads into the airport from... yeah, I mean, just talk about, you know, of course, we'll get all the nutters from the Net Zero Brigade going, oh, yeah, electric vehicles, very safe, you know, they're not any more dangerous than diesel vehicles. And why do they keep exploding then for no apparent reason?
Well, I hope no one's hurt, but I wonder if it's a Tesla or if it's a Chinese vehicle.
Yeah, well, we don't know the answer to that, but we will keep you updated as much as we possibly can. I mean, the other news I'm going to talk about on the show this morning is that I read a piece at the weekend, because I'm very unsure about this expansion of Heathrow into a third runway, where apparently they're saying they're now going to have to move the M25 to build the third runway. Can you imagine what that's going to do for the public trying to drive around it? Because, I mean, this weekend it was bad enough. There were delays of up to an hour trying to get around the Heathrow area. Can you imagine them moving the M25 and doing it with any sort of efficiency whatsoever?
And the years it's going to take to do it.
Oh, my God, absolutely awful.
Well,
but, you know, I mean, let's go back to what we were talking about, the migration business, because There's no evidence, really, is there, that this Labour government, despite the appointment of a new, border czar, despite the instructions to Border Force to deport more people than ever, despite the fact that they've now said they're going to get rid of foreign criminals more quickly, they're saying they're going to give them ankle tags. I mean, the fact is that until they stop allowing these bloody people into the country, it's not going to make any difference, is it?
No, it's not. And yeah, the only evidence we've got so far is they're, as I said earlier, going to make it easier. The bill that's now going through Parliament, the Border Security, Asylum and Immigration Bill, that, if anything, is going to make things easier. It's going to make people want to come here, because any deterrence that we had in place, namely the Rwanda bill, which wasn't perfect, we know that, but it was something that was going to have some effect. That's being done away with. And the bill has absolutely nothing about refusal, returns.
Yeah.
It's all about going after the gangs. Well, fine, go after the gangs, but what are you going to do when you find them if they're in Afghanistan, or if they're in Sudan or Libya or Iraq or Iran? I mean, the government has pretty much given up on controlling. What they're going to do is manage this.
Yeah.
And there's going to be thousands. There's already evidence that we could be heading for another record year this year.
No question,
There's 155,000 have come since this all started.
Right.
So far this year, around 4,000 have come. That's more than any other year in the comparable period.
Yeah.
We are heading for records, and we're going to get lots more like this guy Wadi coming in, and we're not going to do anything about it.
Right.
It's a disgrace.
It really is. And the fact that he's one of the few people that we've been able to identify is unusual, because I'm sure that Mr. Abu Wadi will have plenty of cohorts and plenty of former compatriots from Gaza or from Syria who have fought on the wrong side of the terrorist engagement, and who are now living happily in Neasden or something like that. I mean, it's absolutely bloody unbelievable. Al, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Let's say we'll keep you updated on this breaking story. Heathrow Airport hit by major delays. If you're flying out today, do check with your airline, because part of the M4 has been shut down, so you may not even be able to get there. Why? Because an electric vehicle has burst into flames in the tunnel going into Heathrow. I mean, I've told you about this before. No wonder these things have gone so horribly wrong. Bursting into flames inside the tunnel. I think happily we can report that nobody's been hurt, but we'll keep you updated on that as well. But who knows what sort of damage has been caused to the tunnel, because what we know, when an electric vehicle goes on fire, it actually does do an incredible amount of toxic damage to the environment around it. And who knows, it may even structurally damage the tunnel, because you can't put an electric vehicle fire out. You have to just let it burn until it finishes. So, I mean, it will be like an oven in there, and it might alter the structure of the thing. Crikey, unbelievable. Claire says this: as a dog walker and owner of 2 dogs, I can tell you that dog people are more loyal and more clean. We understand hard work. We get out there no matter the weather. Cat people, in my opinion, belong to the left-wing thinkers of society: lazy, unloyal and a bit smelly. Listen, I didn't say that. That's Claire's view, not mine. If you're a cat person, I'm sorry if you're offended by this, but quite frankly, Rachel Reeves is a cat person, and so is Keir Starmer. What does that tell you? Huh? They haven't got a dog. Sorry. Bad news. Down with them. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Not everybody's taking my comments about cats as well as they ought to, really. Melissa says this, Mike, your show is great, but F you and your comments about cats. Get a grip. Is it harsh? I mean, it's only like, it's not even 8 o'clock in the morning. Shouldn't be feeling quite... See, that proves to me that you're not in control of your emotions, Melissa. I'm sorry to say. Let's get a voice note from Sean on Reform.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. So, Reform, this Rupert Lowe stuff, it doesn't pass the sniff test to me. It reeks a stitch up. And when it reeks a stitch up, it looks like a stitch up, it tends to be a stitch up. You know, I honestly don't think that any of these people can be trusted remotely, Mike. I really don't, mate. Great show, mate.
Listen, we're going to try and get to the bottom of this for you, because I feel like we owe it to the people who listen to this show and who watch this show, because Reform is what you're believing in. Reform is the only place you want to go. So if you can't trust what's going on there, you need to know why, don't you? Stuart says, morning, Mike. I think we need to give Reform some slack. After all, it's a massive project to take on the Tories and Labour, and I, for one, will never vote Labour or vote for the Tories again. Reform of the future for the British patriot. I think you're right about that. And that's why it's even more important that we get to the bottom of what is going on here, honestly. And I have no side to me here. It's not about me, sort of raining on their parade. It's not about me suggesting that there's something wrong, something rotten in the state of Denmark or whatever it is. You know, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we deserve to know the truth, and we deserve to be told the truth. And I think people in Reform who want to vote for Reform and who want to be in the party, and maybe who have even become members of the party, are owed, quite a lot on that. Right, let's talk to LaDonna Harvey, Arizona Morning News at KTAR in Phoenix. LaDonna, very good morning to you.
Good morning to you, and I'm going to pick a fight over the cat thing.
Yeah, I knew you would. Listen, sometimes, in order to seek the truth, you have to sometimes upset one or two people and the apple cart gets spilled over. But, listen, where are we in the world, LaDonna, if you can't have a difference of opinion and do it with a good grace?
Well, I can do it with good grace, but I am going to still pick a fight.
I'm also quite frightened.
Although I have cats and a dog, so
yeah.
I have both.
Yeah, and you also have a Corvette, which kind of ameliorates all of it, to be honest.
It kind of does. It just makes me that much better than you.
Yes.
Just that much.
I have sort of disgracefully used the fact that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's useless, who has a cat, is clearly a representative of people who have cats, and I realise that that's probably not right. But yeah, but there is a difference between cats and dogs, people, aren't there? Don't you think?
Yeah, it's, when you have a dog, and I have my dad's dog Gunner with me right now, so he's the fattest Labrador that ever walked the planet. They are more labor intensive. Cats are a little bit easier.
Yeah.
You kind of approach them on their terms, not yours. Right. With a dog, it's like, hey, come here, and they're like, yeah.
Yeah,
and excited.
That's it. I mean, the dog is the only reason I go to the house at the weekend, because my kids are hardly ever there. One of them's away at university, the other one's out all the time. Their mother couldn't care less whether I live or die, and the dog is really the only reason I go there. The dog is like, oh my God, you're back! Isn't it great? Let's go out. Whatever, doesn't matter. Oh, we're not going out. Okay, well, I'll just sit with you then. He's wonderful. Whereas cats is kind of. I have had cats in the past, and you don't really have cats; they have you. It seems to me.
Absolutely, you are their human servant, and will be treated as such.
I mean, one of the things that people say about Donald Trump, funnily enough, is that he has no pets at all, which makes him quite a weird individual, which we can come back to. Let's have a look at what he said about Ukraine.
Are you comfortable with that? The fact that you walked away and Ukraine may not survive?
Well, it may not survive anyway, but, we have some weaknesses with Russia. It takes two. Look, it was not going to happen, that war, and it happened. So now we're stuck with this mess. Think of what he stuck me with.
So, I mean, he's basically said that Ukraine might not survive. It's on the front page of the Telegraph today. The story's gone slightly quiet, I suppose, over the weekend. I'm sure that's not the case if you're in Ukraine. But what's happening this week? We're having meetings. I think Volodymyr Zelensky's going to Saudi Arabia today to meet up with the Crown Prince. There's talks going on between the State Department and the Russians. What are the American public saying about it, I guess?
Right now, the American public is a little bit confused as to exactly what is going on, and I mean this in a very broad, sort of general term.
Yeah.
You know, one minute we support Ukraine, and with the new presidency, that seems to have stopped. And, you know, we've sent weapons there. We've sent money there, maybe not quite to the tune that President Trump is putting it forward, but we still have spent a lot of money there. And there is concern that Vladimir Putin is essentially, you know, being able to go rogue with nothing there to stop him. And I think there's a lot of concern from everyday Americans who say, okay, but what about what Vladimir Putin does next?
Right.
Because he is going to do something next. He started with Crimea. This didn't start with just Ukraine. It started with Crimea, annexed that, hardly a hue and cry.
Yeah.
Boom, he's in Ukraine. And what, next week he just gets the entire USSR back together? Much of Europe must be very, very nervous right now.
Well, an awful lot of it is. Certainly Poland and some of those countries that are
Sure.
bordering Russia are very much concerned about it. And it seems, as I say, as though there's a kind of lull going on in sort of diplomatic relations, if you like, because after all the, you know, the madness of what happened the week before, Keir Starmer went to D.C., suddenly Zelensky went to D.C., he was kind of kicked out of the White House, then he turned up in Britain, then there was a Euro summit. Nothing's really happened for about a week or so. So you wonder, I mean, and this is one of the things I was going to ask you about as well. Donald Trump's been so busy, you know, in the first sort of 6 weeks of his presidency, that at some point or other he's going to have to slow down, isn't he?
Absolutely, he's going to have to slow down. You know, the thing with Donald Trump is you never really know what he's doing until you know what he's doing. And that's because he's got this going over here on this hand, and you're over here watching this, and this other thing is going on that he's not talking about. And suddenly, you know, you have a kind of a resolving of the situation. I mean, I think that's best case scenario is that he is working towards some sort of solution in Ukraine. But what it might be, quite frankly, none of us really has any idea at all.
Right.
And nor does Europe. Nobody seems to know what it is exactly he's doing or he's aiming for. And it makes you a little nervous.
Yeah.
So hopefully something happens this week and we get some kind of a resolving of the situation that is not just a complete capitulation to Russia.
Right. I think everybody wants peace. There's no doubt about that. Let me just ask you about one other story which caught our eye here in the UK. The final, or one of the first firing squad executions in 15 years in the US of A. A bullseye was painted on a piece of white paper and then stuck on the heart of a man, a double murderer called Brad Sigmund, 67 years old, and he was executed by firing squad, which is, I mean, it's kind of hard to believe that that's happening in 2025, isn't it?
Right, and it's the last three that happened in Utah. There has been quite a bit of debate in the United States over the death penalty. You can feel how you feel about it one way or the other.
Right.
But you know, methods, I suppose, matter, and there have been questions about the drugs being used. Are they humane? Yada yada yada. I would put it to you that being shot through the heart maybe is not the route that I would have taken, but that is in fact the request that he made. His final.
He wanted to be shot.
It's. I mean, he had killed his ex-girlfriend's two parents. So alas, you know, this execution was going to happen, but to be shot was an interesting choice.
Yeah, that is very strange. And I mean, is there any kind of process by which you have to go through if you said I want to be shot by a firing squad, or I'd like to be given a lethal injection, or I want the electric chair? I mean, is there anybody in between the individual and that decision who says maybe you shouldn't want to do that?
Yeah, mostly it's just their lawyers trying to stop the execution, and his lawyers did work until the last minute to stop the execution. I don't know that they were thrilled with his choice either.
Right.
But here we are, and I guess this is the life we're living.
And there's a lot fewer. There's a lot fewer states now that do it, aren't there? Because I think when I was living there in the 80s, there was still quite. I would say maybe 50% of states still had the death penalty, but now it's quite a lot smaller, isn't it?
Right. California has kind of put it on hold and then off hold. That's happened several times. Not every state does have it. Mostly it's just life in prison without the possibility of parole.
I presume California's only stopped doing it because it's not good for the planet, as opposed to it's actually not good for the people they're shooting.
Right. Well, as far as I know, California hasn't done a hanging or a lynching or any sort of, ultra-violent death penalty in a long time. I think the last one was lethal injection. It was maybe, 15, 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think a load of us, and people will be listening to this show here in this country going, can't quite believe we're even having this conversation, because America is supposedly a forward-thinking democracy, a leading country in the Western world, if not the leading country, and yet they still put people to death.
It's very uncomfortable, and it's so funny because my thoughts on it, my own personal thoughts on it, have changed over the years.
Yeah.
I used to believe that there are some people who just should not be breathing our air. They're not worthy of it.
Right.
And that has, I think, changed because I've gotten older and hopefully a little bit wiser. And I think, being locked up might, in fact, be the worst thing ever in the history of the world, with the crappy food and the terrible people that you're around. And just for the rest of your life, that's fine with me.
Yeah.
I don't really, I see no need for the state to be taking part in murder, quite frankly.
Yeah, it's a fascinating conversation, which we could probably talk about forever. But listen, great to see you. LaDonna, thanks very much indeed. LaDonna Harvey, the Arizona Morning News, KTAR in Phoenix. The clocks went forward, by the way, for those of you who look forward to spring becoming summer and the weather getting better. It's looking a bit murky out there today, by all means. But, the clocks went forward in America. So in New York, they're only 4 hours behind as opposed to 5. It doesn't make them any less backward, of course. That's another story for another time. Coming up, we're going to be finding out what's going on at Heathrow, hit by major delays this morning because of a electric car fire. An electric vehicle has gone on fire in the tunnel, completely destroyed apparently, according to eyewitness accounts, and we'll find out for you exactly how much that is affecting everything that's going on around Heathrow. Part of the M4 has apparently been closed as well. Alan in East London hasn't got some very nice things to say about me. He says, you like dogs because they follow you around like slaves and do as you tell them, whereas cats are more independent and are more of a challenge. It's consistent with your personalities. You like people to agree with you and don't like dissent. Don't be so dogmatic. I mean, Alan, you've taken a ball and run with it a very long way there, I have to say. I don't care whether people agree with me or not. That's why I do what I do. If you want to disagree with me, that's fine. I don't expect people to follow me around like slaves. No, actually, I don't. And if you want to know whether or not my dog actually does what I want it to do, or I do what he wants me to do, you should come and visit with me one weekend, and you'll see that it's not at all a master and slave dialectic at all. In fact, sometimes it can be reversed, just like the song. 0344499. There he is. There's Ziggy. You've thrown me now. 499 1000 is the number. Coming up, we're going to speak to Gawain Towler to find out what on earth is going on with reform.
whether it's using the chairman or using certain selected individuals who led different parts of the party to attack individuals that seem to rise through their talent or their skill to be able to be on a par with Nigel or seen as a threat. I came in 2014. By 2016, people wanted me to take over as the new leader of UKIP, and only then were kind of the political dogs of war unleashed on me with false accusations I'd committed offences, false accusations that I was with various people despite being married.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until 10 o'clock. Judy Hartley-Brewer will be here then. Freddie sends me this, a nice picture of his dog, who he calls Otto von Bismarck. He's a Labrador by the looks of it. He says, good morning to Ziggy. He'd love a mention on your show. Well, listen, he says, dogs trump cats every day of the week. Listen, I'm not trying to cause problems here. I'm just giving my opinion. You may, of course, disagree or agree. Up to you. On reform, of course, things are slightly more heated. This is from Susan, who says, Mike, my husband has been so disappointed and disillusioned with reform this weekend. Now you think he's untrustworthy as we have a beloved cat. That's on his last legs. Where is he to turn now? We need some help. Sue, listen, I'm not saying he's untrustworthy. I'm just saying I don't trust people that have cats. Doesn't mean he's untrustworthy. You know, my tongue is slightly in my cheek here, by the way. You don't take it too seriously. Let's get a voice note from Liam on reform.
Morning, Mike. Liam here. As a reform voter, for me, this, to be honest, is the nail in the coffin. I think it's abundantly obvious for anyone to see that Rupert Lowe is a really hard-working man, exactly what the party needs, exactly what the country needs. And this looks like a chairman and a party leader who have gone on a mad ego trip over his popularity. It seriously raises massive questions about their leadership qualities, and really makes me worry for the party's future. And like I said, probably the nail in the coffin for me if they're going to get rid of Rupert. Great show, keep it up.
Liam, thanks very much indeed. Let's talk to Gawain Towler, former advisor to Nigel Farage, very, very close to the beginnings of all sorts of things like UKIP, like the Brexit Party, now Reform, of course. Gawain, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
A lot of people very disturbed by what's going on right now. They can't quite make sense of it, and I don't think any of us can, really. What is going on?
Well, I have to agree. I'm a bit upset and disturbed, and it is all, as I say, suboptimal. But there are things that have to be done, and if there were complaints, they have to be followed through. And if we didn't, if we pushed them under the carpet like other parties do, they'd be held to bay later down the line when it all bubbled up. As we all know, often the problems aren't the offence, but the cover-up. And we couldn't possibly have that happen. So something had to be done.
But what you're sort of saying is what is Rupert Lowe is complaining about. There's this kind of underground back chat scenario that, you know, Rupert Lowe has got some kind of problem. You know, he said last night hang on a second. He said last night there are people putting it about that I've got dementia, right? He said that.
I have not heard anything of that sort, apart from that tweet from Rupert.
Well, he says that that's what people have been saying about him. He's been told that this is what's being briefed about him, and certainly some of the conversations and the explanations of what's going on, a bit like what you just said there, is that there are several complaints against him. Now, why would you say that? Why would you say that if those complaints are not yet even found out to be substantial?
They were not complaints against him. There was something going on in his office. They were never about him personally, those complaints.
Well, that hasn't been said by Reform, has it?
No, it was. There were HR things. If you look at it said in his office, not Mr.
Yeah, but
Lowe.
if they're not about him, why is it even an issue?
Because if you have an HR issue within the party and there are problems, it has to be dealt with. The last thing we want is allegations that we covered things up, misogynistic and all the rest of it. So we had to do something. Now, the timeline of all this is, I'm baffled, probably as baffled as you are, but I have not heard anybody making any suggestions about Rupert's capacity in that way. That tweet was the first time I heard it, and I've spoken to almost everybody at senior levels in the party in the last few days, and nobody suggested.
Well, when you speak to those senior people, all right, let me ask you this, Gawain. When you speak to those senior people in the party, what do they say about Rupert Lowe as an individual?
They say he can be a bit difficult, but yes, he's a businessman. He can be difficult. I mean, his track record and history shows that. But he is hardworking. He's driven. And I think the only problem is he's a little bit impatient when it comes to policy. The point about Farage and policy is that he has fantastic political timing. He keeps his powder dry. And Rupert is this machine of questions and Twitter, demanding. And so therefore, I think there's a lack of patience there. That's all.
Yeah, but Nigel Farage is an intelligent individual. He's a great leader of men, I would say, and I say that without fear or favour. He must know that this is damaging the party. He must know that when people, like ordinary members of the public who have become Reform voters, Reform members, they don't like what they're seeing, and he must understand that that's not a good look, surely.
Of course it isn't. Of course it isn't. And in fact, what didn't Nigel write in his piece yesterday in the Sunday Telegraph, that factions' internal fighting is the worst possible thing to be doing.
Right.
Yes, you're right. He's not stupid. We don't want to be fighting. Just calmer heads, cool down, let the facts come out, and respond to the facts when they are out. If we've got police to look into something, wait for the police to report back. If we've got a case,
I mean, are you joking? I mean, how ridiculous is that? Seriously, I mean, that's the other thing, that people see Reform as not like the other parties. You know, why are you calling the police in for? What have the police got to do with
that one? That one absolutely baffles me. I don't understand.
What on earth is that about?
Or I hope. Well, I don't. But
I mean, you know, you might be difficult. I'm difficult. You don't call the police on me because I've decided that, you know, I don't like cats and I like dogs. What, are you going to call the Metropolitan Police on me?
I doubt it. But if you start talking about Jam on First and the Scone War, then you might have some.
Do you know what I'm saying? But I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like a kamikaze. It's like a kamikaze operation.
Yes, because whatever happens of that, something will happen of that, and I don't know what it is. I'm not aware of what was said or what was done. It just seems it seemed out of the blue to me. So we're going to have to wait until that comes back. Yeah. You can't really comment it if that's what's going on.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, if you've got any influence, and I know you do, with the heads of state of the party, tell them to get their act together, for God's sake. Gawain, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Gawain Towler. We'll come back with more after the news.
I spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and Spain lead. The shot from distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in, or ball slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspects in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public has not been told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 4 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10. Of course, Julie Hartley-Brewer's back. She's not got the lurgy anymore, so you'll be pleased to know that she'll be able to lead you through the 3 hours after this show from 10 until 1. Jeremy Carl's back at 4, of course. Ian Collins in from 1 until then. And Kevin O'Sullivan back at 7 p.m. Lots to talk about, of course, throughout the course of the day here. We've been hearing a breaking news story that Heathrow Airport has been hit by major delays as part of the M4 has been shut due to a fire which has broken out inside the Heathrow tunnel. An electric vehicle has apparently been completely destroyed after bursting into flames inside that tunnel. Don't tell me that electric vehicles are the way forward, because they simply are not. 0344 499 1000. Coming up in this hour, Tim Montgomery joins us, founder of Conservative Home, former number 10 advisor, now member of Reform, of course. We'll ask him what the hell is going on inside that party, because as we just heard from Gawain Towler, he doesn't understand why Nigel Farage, Richard Tice and of course Rupert Lowe are having this massive argument, and Lee Anderson's held the whip. He's been suspended from the party. Nobody knows what is going on and why they are sort of self-harming in this way, because it seems utterly ridiculous. Harry Cole, he's also going to join us, Political Goes with the Sun. He's got his column in there this morning. We'll talk to him about that, as well as many other things as well. 0344 499 1000. We've also got Rachel Reeves coming out as a cat owner, which has spurred a bit of a debate, it has to be said, between those of us who like dogs and those of you who like cats. I'm saying that the world is split into those two groups, and you can either be one or the other. You can very rarely be both, I'm afraid. And the fact that Rachel Reeves and Keir Starmer have got cats would suggest to me that makes people who own cats to be somewhat untrustworthy. 0344 499 1000. This is what you've been saying so far this morning about Reform.
As a Reform voter, for me, this, to be honest, is the nail in the coffin.
I'll never vote for them again, because I don't believe Rupert Lowe is exact as what they say he is. He just doesn't come across that kind of man.
Thorne, Farage and Lowe, I mean, I suppose the truth lies somewhere in the middle.
Yes, I think that's probably right. 6 minutes past 8. Morning, Mike, says Wayne. I've got 5 dogs and 7 cats and 3 kids. I can assure you this 100% makes me mental. I keep being my medicine of sanity, says Wayne in Essex. Well, listen, Wayne, I don't know how you manage that. 5 dogs, 7 cats and 3 kids. Sounds like you need an ark to get around. I mean, blimey. I mean, just having 1 dog and 1 cat would be bad. I don't think Farage is very popular, says Susan. People are desperate for change and would vote for almost anyone. He has a knack of choosing the popular issues, and people are responding for those reasons. I voted Reform, and I'm not keen on Farage and his huge ego, but I really appreciate the truth of Rupert Lowe. Coming up, hay fever season. This started early, apparently. We're going to be talking about why David Lammy decided to give 50 million quid to Syria when they're now murdering loads of Christians. And a gun-toting immigrant who hates Jews has been allowed into Britain. Brilliant. Nobody knows where he is. This is Talk. I mean, also, as if that wasn't bad enough, old Just Stop Hoyle, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has been outed once again this morning by the Daily Mail, because we told you last week how he spent £250,000 of taxpayers' money flying around the world, apparently doing so on the basis that he was wanting to spread the love about the wonderful parliamentary estate and how great British democracy was. Well, it turns out he took his missus on a lot of the trips, and that's why it cost 23 grand to go to Singapore as opposed to 2. That's why it cost, 40 grand to go to Brazil as opposed to 2, because he took his wife and several other people with him as well. Absolutely incredible stuff. Let's say a very good morning to Tim Montgomery. Tim, very good to see you, sir.
Good morning.
Good to talk to you. And we've got to kick off, I suppose, with the reform situation. I don't imagine that you have perhaps any particular insight more than the rest of us do, but it seems to me to be an entirely unnecessary act of self-harm for them to get involved in all this, doesn't it?
Well, Mike, I don't know whether I can add insight or not. I've been a member of Reform for 3 months now, so I'm still learning about the party. And, all parties have internal rivalries and disagreements. But what I did pick up very early on, even though I'm a new member, were bubbling tensions between Nigel and Rupert. And even in the 3 months I've been a member, those sort of tensions seem to be growing. And I think it was a big moment, of course. You remember when Elon Musk sort of basically said Nigel Farage shouldn't be leader, and then basically talked about Rupert Lowe as a possible person that could lead reform.
Yeah. And that was a strange thing to do, wasn't it? Because it would seem as though, one, it wasn't really in Elon Musk's wheelhouse, if you like. Why did he do that?
I don't know why Elon Musk does a lot of things. Look, you've asked me one question, what's going on in reform? You're now asking me what's going on in Elon Musk's head. Now, that's a much more difficult challenge.
Listen, I can only ask the questions, Tim. I can't help it if you can't ask them. But yeah, but I mean, it just seems to me that there are many ways they could have handled this, and this is not the best way to do it.
Well, look, I think what Nigel Farage, the fact is, Mike, populist sort of right-wing parties do sometimes attract undesirable elements. And why Nigel Farage, one of the reasons why Nigel Farage has been successful over the years is that he's got rid of those elements as soon as it's been clear that they've emerged.
Yes.
And there's quite a lot of people he has expelled from, first of all, UKIP, then the Brexit Party, then Reform. And I think he's got used to behaving that way against people that threaten his leadership, threaten the party's standing. And, of course, the big question is he's doing the same to Rupert Lowe. Is Rupert Lowe in the same category as those other people? And that's where I think Nigel Farage may have got himself into a little bit of trouble, because a lot of people have respect for Rupert Lowe in a way they didn't have respect for those other people.
Yes. Well, all I can say, Tim, is observing the sort of reaction on social media, and also the reaction this morning starting to do this show, is that people are just very disappointed, and many of them are either siding with Rupert Lowe or not. But generally speaking, people who have gone to the trouble of voting for them, who have gone to the trouble in many cases of signing up to be a member of the party, are just very disillusioned by what they're seeing.
Yeah, and I can understand that. And I haven't had a happy weekend. I've been doing quite a few of these interviews, and I've had a lot of response from people. And the party is quite divided on this issue, and there is an awful lot of upset. What I would say, just hearing some of those reactions from some of your listeners before we spoke, I think people underestimate the importance of Nigel Farage in those responses.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage is one of the most successful politicians in recent British history.
No question.
And Reform would not be in the place it is if it wasn't for Nigel Farage. So the idea that he's lost his touch, that he's somehow not an asset, really is nonsense.
Yeah.
Nigel Farage nearly always knows what he's doing. He's been vindicated by so many of his decisions. I'm not sure he's got this one right, but the idea that it's time that Nigel Farage's time is over, I really think that's nonsense.
Yes, no, I agree with you totally. I mean, I had this conversation with Harry Cole last week, because Harry did the drive show here on last Thursday, had Nigel Farage on the show, and Nigel was quite defensive when it came to conversations about Rupert Lowe, when Rupert Lowe had said it needs to be not any longer a protest party with a messiah at the head of it, and he said, we're definitely not a protest party. And I said to Harry on Thursday last week, people forget that without Nigel Farage, there would be no Reform Party. There would be no 5 MPs. You know, he absolutely swung that, and he made that happen. And I've known him a long time, as I'm sure you have, and he's a very estimable individual. He's a great guy. He's a very good leader, as far as I know. People say that he's fallen out with other people in the past. Sometimes you have to do that. You know, politics is a nasty game. It's not, you know, it's not pleasant a lot of the time. And I think that, and when I was asked about who ends up, you know, blinking first, I said, you know, for me, Rupert Lowe will probably end up having to leave Reform because, you know, there's no way back from this, really. Which doesn't mean to say that Rupert Lowe is in the wrong. It just means that he's in the wrong job. If he thinks that he can challenge Nigel Farage and somehow be cleverer than him, then he's never going to win that.
Yeah, well, the big mistake was for Rupert Lowe to do a big interview with Andrew Pearce in the Daily Mail.
Yeah.
Look, I have concerns about some things in Reform, but the best way, particularly if you're an MP in the party, is to talk about them privately. And perhaps Nigel Farage overreacted to Rupert Lowe going in the Daily Mail. But if I was leader of a party and I had one of my only small band of MPs making some pretty serious criticisms of me in a newspaper, and, you know, that followed other things that maybe you're unhappy with, I'd certainly take action. I wouldn't just pretend it hadn't happened.
No, because you can't really, can you? Let me start a far more, shall we say, controversial subject with you than Reform, which is dogs versus cats. Rachel Reeves gave an interview to Beth Rigby at Sky, and I don't know why journalists like Beth Rigby do this, because I find it really, really sort of odious, actually. But she's tried to make Rachel Reeves look sort of human by asking her about pets. Have a look at this.
I was going to ask you, because obviously the Prime Minister bought his children the Siberian kitten Prince when he became Prime Minister and they moved to number 10. Did you buy your children any pets?
Yeah, we've got a cat as well.
Did you get a cat?
Yeah, I held out for 11 and a bit years of being a mum to get a pet. We had a couple of fish before, but they didn't survive.
So you also bought a cat?
Yes, there is a reason why everyone in this building has cats.
Are there loads of mice?
There's a few. It's
your kitten.
It's a little rescue kitten. I've actually really taken to it. During the budget, it was obviously a massive week for me because I was left alone with the cat because my husband took the kids away from half term. So I know everyone thinks, the budget was a big moment, but it's actually keeping a kitten alive for a week as someone who's never had any responsibility for pets before, really.
I mean, that's quite revealing in its way, isn't it? You know, she talks about the pressure of keeping a cat alive. You know, she's managed to kill the economy off in 6 months, so I dare say any living thing might be in jeopardy anywhere near her. But, you know, she also talks about the fish in such a dismissive way, and I'm sorry to make a big thing of this, but she goes, yeah, we had a couple of fish, but they didn't survive. Like as if there was some kind of nuclear winter in her house or something. I find it very odd indeed. And I'm saying, and I know this is going to upset lots of people, I think people who have cats can't be trusted.
Oh my goodness, you sound like J.D. Vance.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, well, it was a very tough interview from Beth Rigby, isn't it? Really asking the
I mean, for God's sake.
The tough questions.
Right. You know.
No, well, I'm a complete, if we're on the dog v cats thing, I'm a complete dog person.
Good man.
I'm probably not negative about cats as you are, but for me, of course, dog is God spelt backwards.
Yeah.
And I really do think they're sent by God to be our best friends. You know, you can never feel unloved with a dog. You know, they greet you when you return home like no one else. And their loyalty. And I worked with Ian Duncan Smith for a while, and his wife, Betsy, is patron of a charity where the dogs, they can detect cancer just through the scent, scent in a person before almost all technological devices. And so the NHS, because of the work that Betsy's doing, is currently looking at whether they can use dogs for early diagnosis of cancer. So, yeah, no, dogs v cats.
Interesting. Also, you may have noticed this at the weekend. Rupert Lowe actually put a tweet out with him holding the family dog, saying, if you want loyalty, get a dog. You know, because, I mean, obviously that was his message to the other people in Reform. Let's talk about the Rachel Reeves sort of scenario and Starmer as well this week, because about 80 backbenchers are apparently threatening to give the Prime Minister a bit of a slap over these welfare reforms that Labour are trying to push through, because they say that they need to save money, and by doing so they need to save about, I think it's $5 billion off the welfare budget. I'm not convinced they're going to be able to do it, are you?
No, well, at work I do at the Centre for Social Justice with Ian Duncan-Smith, mentioning him again. You know, it was our think tank that came up with the universal credit benefit, and we worked on it for a number of years. And what we've learned is it's absolutely the case that there are far too many people on sickness benefits at the moment. But the difficulty is that you can get people off these benefits, but they often need some help for the first 3, 6, 9 months to transition back into the workplace, particularly if they have mental health or other problems. That help is actually quite expensive in the short run. So you need to invest in getting people off welfare. So you have a short-term actually increasing costs to get people off benefits, and then you save money in the long run. So it can be done, but if the government is looking for quick savings, it doesn't happen that way.
No, quite. Tim, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Tim Montgomery, former number 10 advisor and Reform Party member, as baffled as the rest of us are about what on earth is happening at the very top of that party. Let's get a voice note from Len.
Morning, Mike. Great show as always. Yeah, this row with Reform, I mean, me and a lot of people I know voted Reform this time around have been so disappointed this weekend. How on earth they let things come to this when they've been on the ascendancy for so long, giving everybody so much hope, so much positivity. You know, and Reform is the last chance to stop this country, in your own words, Mike, going down the gurgler, because we're going down the gurgler very, very quickly. Reform are our only chance to get out of it. How could they let this happen? It's just ridiculous. I'm so disappointed with them.
Absolutely right, Len, and so many other people as well. We'll continue talking about this because there's a big story this morning about what is going on in Reform. Lorraine is on the phone from Chelmsford. Lorraine, very good morning to you.
And good morning to you, Mike. As you know, I've always been a big backer of Nigel Farage.
Yeah.
But I've got to the stage now where I think a lot of people in this country don't actually see this as a left-right issue anymore.
Right.
It's more to do with sort of like globalisation and sovereignty. I think that Nigel is frightened of this label far-right. He takes great pride in the fact that he destroyed BNP.
Yeah.
I think we're now at a different stage in this country where we want to save our culture and our heritage. And Rupert Lowe is actually speaking the language of the majority, well, not the majority, certainly for people like me and many people, of course, in this country now. And as he says, to talk about mass illegal migration and also legal mass immigration in this country isn't far right. It's to do with the life of the people in this country.
Right. And do you think Nigel's worried that if he goes down that road, he won't be able to appeal to enough people to get elected as the Prime Minister or as the government?
Absolutely, that's where he's coming from. He's frightened of this label far right. But as I say, he's picked up a lot of people from the north that would have voted Labour. Because it's to do with our heritage, our culture, the future for our children. It is mass immigration. And not only that, you know, it is Islamisation of this country, let's be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, now, even with regards to our policing, our judiciary, the way the civil service is all run, we don't see that it's being run for our benefits. I mean, even we're in Lent. There's been no mention of Lent. It's all to do with Islam, isn't it? The king, you know.
Although, to be fair, Wes Streeting did do, after the day that they did the iftar in Parliament, the second day, they actually did an Ash Wednesday service as well. So at least they did that. But you're right. I mean, people perceive it to be, you know, wrong to try and be a Christian or wrong to try and, you know, celebrate British culture because, you know, most of the organisations that run this country don't really bother with it. I think even the Church of England didn't even bother mentioning Lent, which is absolutely bonkers. Lorraine, listen, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. I think you make a very good point. Coming up, Harry Cole is going to be here. He's got a column in The Sun this morning on page 10. Go and read it if you haven't yet, and we can talk about it because he's talking about Sir Keir Starmer's movement, shall we say, possibly in the right direction. I'm going to take him to task a bit on that, but he may have a point. And also, he says Dominic Cummings is behind the scenes at Reform now. I wonder whether he is causing all of these problems, because you know what he's like. I mean, everywhere he goes, there's a problem. You know, you can see clearly now. This is Talk.
whether it's using the chairman or using certain selected individuals who led different parts of the party to attack individuals that seem to rise through their talent or their skill to be able to be on a par with Nigel or seen as a threat. I came in 2014. By 2016, people wanted me to take over as the new leader of UKIP, and only then were like kind of the political dogs of war unleashed on me with false accusations I'd committed offences, false accusations that I was with various people despite being married.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 25 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10, of course. Harry Cole, political editor of The Sun, is going to join us very shortly. How about this from Samantha? I'm worried about what's happening about Nigel Farage and Richard Tice not being more open about Rupert Lowe. I would like to hear the opinion of the very sensible Anne Widdecombe. Well, I bet you Anne Widdecombe would take them and smash their heads together and go, for God's sake, you two, sort yourselves out. Don't be so bloody ridiculous. And that, I think, is what many people would say. Let's get a voice note from Paula on the ECHR.
Morning, Mike. Paula in Liverpool. Why can't we use the ECHR bill to our advantage? Why can't we use it to protect our people in our country? There is a specific caveat in it that says if any individual presents a threat to our people or to our country, then none of the above applies. It's about time we started getting smart and started getting rid of some of these scumbags that we just seem to let in and let roam free in our country to do what they want when they want. Thanks, Mike. Great show, Paula.
No problem at all, Paula. Very well said. Abu Wadi, pictured in the Daily Mail today with a gun. Looks like some kind of AK-47. Also arriving on Thursday in the Channel, vowing to basically do away with all Jews. He says basically that he doesn't want any of them to survive, doesn't want any of them to live. And of course, he has now vanished into the ether. Nobody knows where he is. Nobody knows where he's going. Nobody knows what he's going to do. But he is a Palestinian Hamas supporting scumbag terrorist. Brilliant. Marvellous, isn't it? Fantastic. Let's talk to Harry Cole, political editor at The Sun. His column in The Sun this morning. I'm going to take issue with you a little bit, Harry, this morning. You seem to be telling us that Keir Starmer might be making some good decisions and he might be on the right track.
Well, I think, look, on defence spending, that's the right thing to do. There's a white paper on legal immigration coming in a couple of weeks that I'm hearing is going to be pretty tough on restricting access for foreign workers in this country, making it much harder to come here. Yeah. Let's wait and see it. But sounds good. Look, the benefits bill does need slashing. I mean, it's absurd that it's got so large, and if he can do it, then good. I'm saying he's making the right noises. I'm reserving judgment until we see a few things like some actual tangible NHS reform. And I'm very worried about his Brexit renegotiation, which I think is going to be a complete capitulation and end up tying us closer back to the single market and making it the last 10 years slightly pointless.
Yeah.
But if he's saying, he's trying to do the right things, and whether he believes it or not, we'll wait and see. But he's been forced into this economically and politically, slashing the size of Whitehall. Good stuff. What I think the problem is, though, is his party going to wear it? He can say all this great stuff and say, this is the way we should go in, going for the centre ground, the common sense vote. But look to this flank. The left in this country haven't gone away. It wasn't that long ago that the Labour Party was dominated by Corbynistas. The trade unions are, they're not just going to go away because it's a Labour government. And actually, if you look at some of the characters that are being elected at the moment into really senior positions in trade unions, Guy Eddie Dempsey's going to be the new at the RMT. I mean, imagine I've seen him on Talk, and he's basically a communist. Then we've got Matt Rack, who used to be the Fire Brigade Union. He's now got, he's not a teacher, but he thinks he's going to try and take over one of the teaching unions. 500,000 teachers there under hard left leadership could cause a lot of problems. And then you've got the Greens, they're going up in the polls. If you keep an eye on the polls, they got about 6% in the election. They're up nearly 9% now. And then I look at what happened in Germany, where the sort of, soft left of centre governing party got absolutely spanked a few weeks ago, and actually, everyone was looking at the rise of the right in Germany, but actually look at the rise of the really hard left. Between them, they got about 15%. Right. And I'm thinking, if that happens to Starmer, then it's curtains. So he can say all the good things he wants to do, but whether he's got the balls to stick to it when the howling starts, that's where I think it's going to get interesting.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I guess you might say, if you were to put down in black and white without actually referring to which party he's in, he's spending more on defence, yes, he's clamping down on immigration, and yes, he's actually going to clamp down on welfare as well, you would say, well, maybe he's been listening to me on this show, maybe he's been listening to you, reading your stuff in the paper as well as listening to you on Talk, and maybe he's finally seen a chink of light. But we're hearing this morning as well that about 80 backbench MPs are going to be pushing him on this welfare reform, saying they don't want him to do it.
Well, exactly. It's already beginning, isn't it? He can say, Rachel Reeves has got to find a hell of a lot of money down the back of the sofa, and the benefits budget, 1 million people on the sick, it is an obvious place to start. That said, that's what I mean. He can say all this stuff. He can set the direction of travel. But he's got a lot of people behind him who don't want him to be doing this stuff. They're, look at what they've already weathered in the short time they've been in government. They've sucked up those tax rises. They've sucked up those. Well, they quite like the tax rises, some of them, but they've sucked up the winter fuel payment stuff without really a massive rebellion. I think this will be the one that really does sort of blow for them. And benefit reform is hard. There are lots of genuine people who need help and support. And sort of sorting them from the people who might be perhaps taking the mick a bit is a very hard task. Just ask Ian Duncan Smith about the scars on his back from when he introduced universal credit. These are very emotive issues, and the noise of protest can be very, very, very effective in watering this down. So yeah, I'm not surprised they're already starting. This is just the opening salvos.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about reform. You've got a little piece in the columns today about Dominic Cummings back on the scene, possibly mixing it with some of the guys from Reform. It wouldn't be at all surprising, would it, that some of the hostilities have broken out because Dominic Cummings is suddenly appeared.
Well, I mean, he's never far from trouble. It's my advice to Nigel be sup with a long spoon there. I don't think he's back sort of in the room. I think I think they're talking tactics. They're in communication, which in itself is amazing because we remember back to the Brexit referendum. Cummings, was leading Vote Leave and was determined to stop Nigel Farage getting anywhere near the official campaign. He bananas when I think it was ITV put him in one of the debates, and there was all this massive blow up about that, and they were not buddies. But no, the little birdie tells me they are talking, and they're talking tactics. Interestingly, Cummings did pop up and say, everyone needs to vote Reform at the local elections, and on one of his many posts on social media, which are increasingly deranged. I just think he is a toxic influence. Yeah. He's a bit of a crackpot. And let's look at his track record. Every single politician, almost, apart from Michael Gove, every single politician he's worked with, he's ended up blowing up. I mean, look what he did to Boris. He's openly boasting now that he was a string puller behind Partygate. He did the same thing to Ian Duncan Smith back in the day. And I just think, literally letting that mad fox into your hen house, which is already pretty volatile, shall we say? I'd be careful there.
Yeah, and what does it all mean, do you think? I mean, I said to you last Thursday on Drive when you were here that basically I think Rupert Lowe is over. I think, there's only one way this ends, and that's when Rupert Lowe leaves Reform, which leaves them with 4 MPs. I mean, has anything changed over the weekend to make you think that that's not going to happen?
No, and I think there was an interesting development late last night where the lawyer who's been drafted in by Reform to look at all this stuff released a statement late last night saying, well, hang on, actually, no, Rupert Lowe's saying I said all these things about it. I didn't say that at all. So that was a bit of a blow for him. Look, the way these things go, there was an amazing meme over the weekend. I don't know if you saw it. All doing the sort of rounds on sort of political Twitter, shall we say? And it just had all the 20 people over the years, from Robert Kilroy Silk to Sked to Patrick O'Flynn to Humphrey Bloom, I think he was called. All of these people have all come for the king and missed, and the story always ends the same way. Nigel Farage is obviously clearly quite a hard guy to work with if you are yourself a big character. Yeah. The Nigel Farage show. It's the Mike Graham show, right?
It is, yeah.
So it is tricky because he's obviously a hard character with it, but lots of people have tried to change that, and it only ever ends one way. It ends with them seeing the door and Nigel winning. Yeah. And so the idea that he'd do it when he's ahead in the polls, he's on the up. To try and do it then, I think, tactically might have been a bit of a mistake. I suspect this ends with Rupert Lowe joining a long list of people who have tried to.
And I mean, as many observers say, well, it must be Nigel's problem. Well, no, not really, because if he keeps winning it, it's not his problem. However, I am seeing a lot of people being very disappointed, and a lot of our viewers and listeners saying, we really wish this wasn't happening. Does it harm them in the local elections? Does it harm them long term?
Well, look, I think the problem is that I think that it's the age-old truth, isn't it? That David Cameron once said, Twitter isn't Britain. And actually, the online right, Rupert Lowe is a big figure. He's got the backing of Elon Musk. He's got some remarkable sort of traction online, which eyebrows have been raised about whether Elon's giving him some, magic algorithm juice to push all of his stuff. So he's a big figure online, but out there in the country, I'm not so sure that he is. Nigel Farage has probably got 97% name recognition, I'd say, in this country by now. Rupert Lowe,
totally.
Yeah. So I think what it does is it damages it creates division and damages sort of the core activist base of Reform. And look, it is sad. I think Rupert Lowe is a very effective MP. I think it's remarkable that they weren't able to work together. But it does sound like it's being quite hairy behind the scenes, but so it harms the sort of motivations and the aspirations of the people who are genuinely really active in Reform. But for the wider voters, I'm not sure. I think all they hear is that it's another political party squabbling, and that that was perhaps damages reform in a way that, you know, they weren't the Tories who spent the last 15 years at each other's throats, and they were something new. But, you know, it's not the first time. It's not the first time that Nigel Farage and his MPs or politicians or MEPs have fallen out. And you know what? It hasn't done them a huge amount of harm yet.
No, quite. Good to talk to you, Harry Cole. Very, very nice to see you. Politically Laser at the Sun. Piece in the paper this morning, page 10. What's not to like about some of the noise the government is making lately? It's a challenging piece. Have a read of it. Let's get a voice note from Melissa.
Good morning, Mike. It's Melissa from Cambridgeshire. I'd like to say it's a good morning, but unfortunately it's not. It's one of those head in your hand jobs day. It's Monday morning and it starts all over again. I hope you can make sense of it again this week. It's just so sad with reform. I don't know what I'm going to do now. I was going to vote for them, but now I just don't know. Anyway, hope you have a good day. Bye.
Melissa, good to hear from you. Thank you very much indeed. It is difficult to know what to do, isn't it? This from Barry in North Yorkshire. Great show as always. I'm a paid-up member of Reform and believed in them as our only hope for the future. I'm so deeply disappointed by this spat. And one from Stuart in Perthshire in Scotland. Morning, Mike. I think Reform have finished, I'm afraid. Membership a week ago was going up almost 1,000 every 24 hours, and between Saturday and Sunday it slowed to 106. And so far, since noon yesterday, there have been 35 new members, which is probably less than those who've cancelled. Yusuf and Farage seriously underestimated Rupert Lowe's popularity amongst voters. Well, you know, I mean, you have to be so careful because you have to now know that things move in a very different way than what they used to do. Social media is responsible for that because a movement on social media can mean that you are as popular as you've ever been one minute and then as unpopular as you've ever been the next minute. You've seen people come and go on Twitter. You've seen people come and go on Instagram. Farage, I think, will never go, but I think he's got to be really careful about how this is all handled. 0344 499 1000. Coming up, Catherine Burble-Singh's going to join us. She's talking about maybe 100 schools being closed under Labour, forced to close because of the VAT on private schools. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:41. The sun is up, but you wouldn't know it. It looks pretty gloomy out there. Misty, not sunny. I mean, we've had so much lovely sun for the last sort of 5 or 6 days. We got rather used to it. Spring has sprung. We're going to speak to Jed Futter in a moment, business retail consultant, about something Tesco's are up to with their self-checkout desks. But before we do that, you might notice that Mark Carney, do you remember him? He used to be the governor of the Bank of England. He wasn't very good at it. He's gone back to Canada and he's now apparently become Prime Minister of Canada because old Justin Trudeau is departing these shores. This is a guy who only the other day was threatening Donald Trump with all manner of tariffs and all manner of, terrible kind of, response to what the Americans were doing in terms of trade. Here he is, not taking it very well.
On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you. Even in the very last days of this government, we will not let Canadians down today and long into the future.
Yeah. Close to tears there, Trudeau. He didn't have the backs of the Canadians when he decided to start taking money off them for not employing COVID regulations, did he? Do you remember when he froze the bank accounts of the truckers who all wanted to cross the border and he wouldn't let them? And he was trying to penalise them financially, and they all decided to do a crowdfunding scenario, and he blocked not only the fund, but he took the money out of the fund and gave it to a government account. So he's an absolute hypocrite of the first order. I can't wait to see the back of him. He's like Jacinda Ardern. He's like Nicola Sturgeon. He's almost like the triumvirate, the third man who goes with those two other ghastly, horrible creatures out of our minds. We celebrated or commemorated at the weekend 5 years since COVID happened, right? He was one of the worst offenders when it comes to COVID and it comes to actually in making people be miserable and suffer as a result of government policy. But that's another story. We'll come back to that. Let's talk to Jed Futter, a business retail consultant, because apparently Tesco's have got some new scales out there, I don't know if you've witnessed this, to catch self-checkout shoplifters. These are the kind of people that put a banana down and say, maybe it's the other way around. They put a pair of sort of Apple earpods down and say it's a banana and walk out with 50 quid's worth of stuff. Anyway, let's see. Jed, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
So, is this really necessary, and what are they actually doing, and how does this thing work?
Well, it's a trial. They've got it in about between 5 and 10 of their stores, and what it is, it's used when you use the scan and shop system in their stores. So you pick up a scanner, you go over the thing, put it all in your trolley as you go around, and when you get to the end, it's in effect the checkout is a weighing scale. So it weighs what's in your trolley against what you've scanned. If it's all correct, then you go through. It's about 3 seconds it takes, I believe, and then you go through straight out.
Oh, right. So it actually weighs you as well, does it?
No, it weighs it weighs the trolley, not you.
Oh, okay. All right. So if you're just, say, doing the what you would normally do just by hand, if you do, if you go to the self-checkout because you've only got a basket or something like that, is it how is that different? Because
that's a difference. So you can see behind in the picture, you can see behind are the normal basket checkouts.
Right.
So it's only if you use the handheld scanner that when you go around the shop store.
Oh, okay. So this is for people who basically don't scan everything and buy loads of stuff or take loads of stuff home that they haven't paid for.
It's a way that they're looking at to reduce theft.
Yes.
So we know that shoplifting is on the rise in many of our shops. So it's one way that they are looking at doing that. But they also say that actually it will make them quicker. So they should be. I mean, it's not a new system. It's a system that's in use in Europe and across other parts of the world already. So Tesco aren't the first ones to do that. They're already taking it from other retailers that are using it around the world.
Right. I mean, I've been most recently in terms of shopping, I suppose. I was in France not long ago, and they had a system whereby the gates don't open until you sort of put the QR code from your receipt onto this little this little device, and then the gate opens, you can leave. But that's of course having paid for it either by hand or by automation. But I mean, I suppose what they could do is just put people on tills who could just charge you for everything you've actually bought.
That is, I do think that actually the solution to this technology actually is much simpler, and actually it is bringing the tills back and actually have people on them as well. Like you, I mean, just last week I was in one of the supermarkets, and when I go to the same supermarket where I've got my own bag, I have to call someone before I can even start putting anything through, and then when I've paid for it, I have to use my receipt to get out through the barrier. So. Some of them do seem to be making it difficult for shoppers to do shopping.
It's a right pain, actually. I mean, whenever I've ever tried to do that checkout where you take the little device around with you and you zap things as you go. I mean, I don't know whether I just look suspicious, but every time I've ever done it, and I would take one of my kids with me, they used to pull me to the one side and go through it all, and I'd be like, "What am I? Do I look like a criminal? Why are you picking on me?" But it happened every single time, and I was starting to get fed up with it, so I stopped doing it in the end.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I go in any of the supermarkets, I try my hardest not to use any of the self-scan. I try and find someone actually that can do it for me, because actually, whenever I use a self-scan, I always have to have at least one person at least once come and do it anyway. So I may as well just go to a checkout.
It's like these places where you have to weigh your own vegetables as well. That's also a nightmare, and it doesn't really work very well. So I just now take it all to the checkout and just go, "You bloody weigh it. That's what I pay you for."
Yeah.
Yeah, there we are. Well, listen, I'm glad we agreed. Jed, you're the first person I've had on the show today that's agreed with me, so well done. 8:47. Okay. We've waited until now for that. Let's get a voice note from Nigel on reform. Not that one.
Morning, Mike. Nigel from Peebles. The only way Reform can sort this out is to hold a live YouTube event hosted by the KC, where Zia, Nigel, Rupert and Lee are all questioned very robustly without fear or favour, so that we, the voters, can see exactly what has happened. If Rupert goes, as it is, 50% of us at least will think there's a stitch-up, particularly after the same thing happening with Ben Habib.
Do you know what? I'd go for that. In fact, if we could organise it here at Talk, I mean, I'd love to do that. Let's get them all in. Get them all, swearing an oath of allegiance to Reform and telling the truth. Because that's what they need to do. Otherwise, it's always going to be a bad smell in the room, I'm afraid. This is Talk.
What do we gain from having Ukraine in the middle of Europe
occupied by Russia. If that peace isn't...
Well, it's not going to be... It won't be occupied by Russia because he's going to do the mineral deal. America will then have skin in the game. Ukraine will be full of Americans. Putin will never invade. And by the way, Putin is so depleted by this war that he thought he would win in 2 weeks that he won't have the ability to invade anywhere, I would suggest, for a decade.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:52. We've been talking about cats and dogs and all kinds of things. There's a fire at Heathrow Airport as well because an electric vehicle has gone completely on fire and has been almost completely destroyed, apparently, in the tunnel, which has caused major delays. Part of the M4 has been shut. If you're trying to get to Heathrow, by all means, let us know what it's like. And if you are trying to get there, you might want to call your airline to make sure you can. Annie from Nottinghamshire says, this morning, Mike, oh dear, folk that refer to their pet as it don't care about pets. I'm a lifetime dog lover, but when family and neighbours are away, I'm happy to feed their cats. Have a great day, Mike, and enjoy the sunshine. Hi to Ziggy from Marley. Thank you. In what world does Beth Rigby live in? Does she think the UK public give a fudge about Rachel Thieves' cat? Bloody stupid people, says Kazpez. Well, you know, the funny thing is that Beth Rigby, I don't know why she's done it, but she's done this kind of, you know, interview with Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, to try and make her seem more human. We'll play it in the next hour again. But she talks about goldfish dying that she couldn't look after. They didn't survive, as though it was some kind of, you know, major problem. And then making out that looking after a cat's really, really difficult. If Rachel recounts pets are on the edge of starvation, what chance have we got, says Martin. I've always found Rachel Thieves a bit fishy, much like her CV, says Steve from Cambridge. That's very good. I like that one. And this one from Stuart. He says, I've not watched Rigby or Sky for years, and that interview was so sickly. No wonder I never watch it anymore. Yeah. And then one from somebody who says, it's good to know Rachel from accounts managed to keep her cat alive whilst killing the economy. I mean, it's true. I mean, I don't know about you, and I know that many of you will take offence at this and take exception to it. Peter Cardwell's already been in touch, sent me a picture of his cat this morning to say that, you know, I hope you don't think I'm untrustworthy. It's not that. And I mean, it's going to sound like very Trumpian for me to say this. You know, I'm not saying all people that own cats are untrustworthy. I just don't trust them. It's that simple. Catherine Burble-Singh is here, CBE, of course, strictest headmistress in the country, a good friend of the show. I'm not even going to ask Catherine if you've got a cat or a dog because I'm frightened of exasperating your ire in this one.
Okay, then.
Have you got a cat?
No, I don't have a cat or a dog.
Excellent. All right, fine, good. Well, that means we can remain completely neutral. Let's talk about what's going on. You've been very active on social media in the last couple of weeks. You're trying to get people to contact Bridget Phillipson and to get her to understand why people like yourself should be listened to, why people like yourself should actually be sought for their advice on what to do with the schools. We hear now that over 100 schools could be forced to close because of Labour's ridiculous VAT on private schools. We also know now that many parents have had to move their children into the state school system. Have you had any more interaction with the Secretary of State?
No. So she did say she would come and visit us. Of course, she hasn't been to see us. But it's not just us that matter. You know, she met with some school leaders. They have been asking for the same things that I am asking for. She has ignored all of us. Her position is very much that she doesn't need to hear from any of us. Their official response from the Department for Education was she doesn't need any lectures on education because she's lived it, i.e. she too has been to school. And the thing is that going to school. It'd be like me saying, I've been to hospital, so I can now do heart surgery.
Right.
It's ridiculous. She doesn't know, and she should be listening to these school leaders who have tried to advise her, and she is refusing to do so and is pushing through her bill. And because Labour have such a huge majority, she will be able to do so. I have tweeted about the kinds of questions that journalists might try to ask her to hold her to account. Why has she not been to visit a single one of the top schools for Progress 8? There are 87 schools that got a +1 on their Progress 8 last year. She hasn't been to see a single one of them. Why has she not listened to what the school leaders that she met with recently? They have asked her to make various amendments to the bill. She is refusing to do so. You know, why is she doing this? I just don't understand. And she's quietly just pushing this thing through. The journalists are not questioning her. I have to say, Mike, you have got to get her on your show. You have got to ask her these questions.
Listen, I would love to, but the Labour government doesn't seem to want to put anybody on my show because they keep refusing. Right. They go to every other show. They do the morning round, as they call it. They go to Sky. They even go to GB News. They'll go to the BBC. They go to ITV. They don't come here because I don't think they're going to like the questions they're going to get asked, because I won't let them away. I won't ask them if they've got a cat or a pet. You know, I will actually ask them what the hell they're doing, ruining the nation. You've got a Chancellor of the Exchequer who pretends he's an economist. You've got a business secretary who pretends he was a solicitor. You've got Bridget Phillipson, who now pretends that she knows about teaching, when she clearly is nothing more than an ideologue who wants to destroy the way that we are taught in this country.
Yeah, it is very concerning. She's taking freedoms away from school leaders and also from parents. The number of places in good schools will be reduced because of this.
Yeah.
She thinks that that's a good thing because she's bringing about equity, bringing all the schools down to have them be the same. I honestly, I am waving, alarm bells here.
Yeah.
You know, we won't see it right away. What will happen is it will take a few years to embed all of the changes. And then in a few years' time, when we've dropped in the international league tables over the last 10 years, we've moved from 27th to 7th in maths. We're now considered to be the top school for reading in the Western world. The fact is that we were a disaster. 20% of kids used to leave school functionally illiterate and functionally innumerate. That has all transformed over the last 10 years. Then there are the small private schools, as you were saying, that are having to shut down. I met this man. I felt so sorry for him. He'd set up this own little school, £6,000 per year that he's charging families, the smallest amount of money possible. Yeah. He had 33 kids. That has now dropped to 25. And when you've got so few children in a tiny school like that, obviously it threatens the existence of the school. All Bridget Phillipson is thinking about is St. Paul's or Harrow or Eton, Westminster. The fact is that those schools are going to be just fine. It's these tiny little private schools all over the country that are now being threatened, and some of them are having to close.
Yeah, it is really sad, isn't it, to see what's happening, and as you say, without anybody really being able to do anything about it. And that is the nature, unfortunately, it seems, of this particular Labour government and its endeavours to change the way that we live. But listen, we will keep fighting. I will keep asking to get her on, and I'm sure one day we will do it. Catherine, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Catherine Burble, CBE, founder and head teacher of the Michaela Community School, the best school in the world, by the way, certainly the best school in Western Europe. 0344 499 1000. One from Emma here who says, if Rachel Reeves struggles to look after pets, I worry for her kids. Yeah, well, absolutely. You worry for the rest of the country, actually. This is Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. Coming up, we've got loads more to do. Isabel Oakeshot's going to be here with us from Israel, and we're going to be talking to a shadow minister as well, Matt Vickers. This is Talk.
Spoke with His Majesty the King to request the dissolution of Parliament, and we will have a general election on the 4th of July.
I have just returned from Buckingham Palace to form the next government of this great nation.
Take a look at what happened. I immediately knew it was very serious, that we were under attack.
The time has come, and this surely is England's time. Williams, who scores, and distance is in. It is Cole Palmer. Low ball in or ball. Slides it in.
An absolute killer of a goal.
I agree with the protest, but I don't think the violence was anywhere near necessary.
No, I mean, I don't think anyone, Nigel, would ever think that the violence was the answer at all.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me.
If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats.
Liberal left couldn't understand that this man could be anything other than the great newsreader, a man of integrity.
Is it possible in any way, shape or form that Keir Starmer didn't know about these facts about the suspect in Southport?
I find it extraordinary that he wouldn't know. It seems that the public is not being told the truth.
No, there's nothing like an American election, I have to say. North Dakota has gone red, South Dakota's red, Texas is red.
Many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason.
Bloomberg UK reporting Ukraine has made the first long-range missile strike inside of Russia.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, coming up to 3 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham. How did we get here? I mean, goodness gracious. We've done 3 hours already. Hard to believe, isn't it? People say to me, how do you manage to do 4 hours a day? Well, it's not enough time. We could do 7 hours a day, honestly. I kid you not. Reform needs loyalty, says Brian in Daventry. At least some support for reform from Mike. Whoever leads reform, it is the only hope for the UK. He says at last some support for reform. And you think there's a general election next week, the way people have changed their opinion of the party so quickly. I don't know what you mean by that, Brian. At last some support for reform. I mean, I've always been very supportive of reform. Not only have I been supportive of them, but I've actually said that I thought that Nigel Farage would be the next Prime Minister. I still think it's possible. I still think there's a lot of work to do, as I've always said, but I think it could be done. But what on earth is going on at the heart of the party is what is vexing so many people this morning as they wake up on Monday morning to say, you know, I thought they were the great white hope and now I'm not so sure. Some people are saying, I'm not sure I'm going to vote for them. Some people are saying they're all over. Some people are saying, you know, this ridiculous kind of, you know, battle of the wills between whether it's Nigel Farage, whether it's Rupert Lowe, whether it's Ben Habib, you know, all of this infighting is not a good look. And it certainly is not a good look. And they really deserve better, some of the people who've given their 25 quid to expect to get something more from reform. Also, coming up in this hour, we'll talk about Rachel Reeves and her pet problem. She apparently had some goldfish that didn't survive. Her words, not mine. And she's struggling to keep a cat alive, apparently. I mean, goodness gracious me, what is going on inside the House of the Chancellor of the Exchequer? Also, of course, they want to try and get rid of the welfare scroungers. How are they going to do that? Nobody knows. We've got Vladimir Zelensky turning up in Saudi Arabia today to see the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. Let's get a voice note from Helena.
Morning, Mike. Helena from Lincolnshire here. You know that I am completely in love with you. I have my bumper sticker in the car now. Anyway, I've got a problem with you this morning. And I'm kind of having an argument with you while you're talking. I have Claude the Spaniel, as you know. But I also have 4 white fur babies with whom I can't function. I am 50-50, man. You can love cats and dogs.
Well, obviously, you're a very unusual and unique woman, Helena, with cats and dogs. Well done to you. And I'm grateful for the good things that you said. Listen, nothing I say is absolutely necessarily the absolute truth. I mean, I have a view on all sorts of things. You don't have to agree with every single thing I say. All I'm saying is that, and you're not one of these, by the way, you don't fall into that category. Rachel Reeves having a cat, Keir Starmer having a cat worries me, OK? these are two people who've got cats who I don't trust. Maybe I was wrong to say that I don't trust everyone that has a cat. But listen, if they're the benchmark, then we're all in trouble. 0344 499 1000. Meow! This is Morning Glory. Or should I say woof? Listen, it's the great dilemma, isn't it? It's the great argument. It's the great divide. It's not just whether you're Labour or Tory. It's whether you're cat or dog. We're going to talk to Matt Vickers in a minute. I'll find out what he wants to say about it. Shadow Minister for Crime, Policing and Fire. If we are giving £50 million to Al-Qaeda, says Julian in London, I don't expect much action on this Hamas bloke now in our country. Well, I don't blame you. You know, we've now got this bloke in the country, right, who's pictured in the Daily Mail today, Abu Wadi, who arrives here on Thursday, hopefully not carrying an AK-47 when he got here. They might have gone, well, you can't bring that in, mate. You know, but he's wandered about. He doesn't seem to have given any kind of destination for where he's going to go. There he is. Nice-looking guy, isn't he? Apparently he wants to kill all Israelis, wants to kill all Jews, basically wants to end Israel's existence, and so he wants to come live in Britain. Brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, I wonder what he's going to be doing. Abu Wadi. If you see him, maybe call the police. That's what I would do. And say, you know, you want to report this man loitering with intent in your street. That's what I'm going to do. If I see him, I'm going to report him and get him arrested and get him deported, quite frankly. He's a terrorist. He's a scumbag. He supports Hamas. Get rid of it, is what I would say. Matt Vickers is here. Matt, very good morning to you.
Good morning. You're having all the best guests this morning. I just heard you had the legend that is Catherine Burville-Singh, dripping, oozing common sense and soundness. You've got all the best people on this morning, Mike.
All the best people come to this show because it's the only place where you hear common sense consistently and all the time. Isabel Oakeshot's going to be here in a minute, reporting in live from Israel, right? But listen, tell me, how on earth is it possible for this bloke, Abu Wadi, to come into this country? He arrives on Thursday. He's easily identifiable on a video that he puts out as the man who has previously said Allah should punish all Jews completely. He's one of more than 1,700 small boat migrants who arrived last week alone. And I know that people will say, well, you guys didn't exactly do much. You're announcing, I think, today a new demand on immigration and a clampdown on the numbers of people coming here. But this bloke is a dangerous anti-Semite, in the words of your colleague, Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp. He's a threat to national security. There's an overwhelming public interest in the Home Office breaking with convention to explain what it knows about him and his whereabouts. How is he allowed to just come into the country and wander about freely?
It's absolutely terrifying, isn't it? And it actually speaks, I mean, this guy needs catching, he needs catching fast. But it speaks to why it's so important that we get a handle on the borders. Since the government came to office, since this Labour government came to office, the number of boats arriving is up 28%. The number of people staying in hotels up 29%. 8,500 more people staying in hotels across this country at the cost of the taxpayer. And the number of people being removed who've arrived illegally is actually going down. It's a horrendous situation. Yeah, big news this weekend from the Conservative Party, who have, you know what, we know that there's been mistakes made in the past. We know that the previous governments haven't done very well on this front. I wasn't a minister then, Kemi wasn't the leader then. We're putting forward a pitch to the British people. We've said that we will disapply the Human Rights Act in terms of immigration cases. That means the end to the nutty chicken nugget gate story that we saw. We heard about the guy who raped someone and suddenly turned out to be bisexual overnight, so couldn't be deported. And well, there's one. I mean, we do illegal migration.
Yeah, we do it here on a daily basis, Matt. We call it Migrant of the Day. You know, last week we had the Nigerian who's a schizophrenic psychopath who apparently can't be sent back to Nigeria because he's possessed by the devil. And you're kind of going, are you just taking the mickey now? This is a joke, isn't it?
It's utterly balmy. There's going to be a vote in that place. We're going to bring forward an amendment that will allow us to disapply the Human Rights Act to these cases, so we can actually, you know, the law that the government makes, that Parliament makes, we're going to have that serviced in our courts instead of having judges creating their own law, making their own judgments about who can and can't stay here. It is balmy. It needs sorting out. But then, as well as illegal migration, we're going to sort out legal migration. We're talking about, well, in government, we made it so that if you arrive here, you were limited as to how many dependents you could bring. We had students turning up with their granny, their auntie, their uncle, and everybody else who they fancied bringing. We capped that. We removed the ability for them to bring so many dependents. But what was meant to happen in April this year was we were putting a salary threshold in place, which meant you had to be earning £38,000 in order to bring somebody here. That's the right thing to do. If you bring somebody here, you should be able to pay for them. You shouldn't be a burden on public services. You shouldn't be a cost to the taxpayer. You should be able to fund those people. And that's exactly what we're putting forward as an amendment in there. We're going to force a vote. People are going to have to vote on this situation.
Well, exactly right. And people in this country are fed up to the back teeth of being told that something's changing and something's happening and something's being done when they can see with their own eyes that nothing's being done. And if anything, the streets are getting more infested with bad people, more infested with crime, more infested with nastiness, and they can see it with their own eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is going the wrong way in the last few months. It's getting much worse rather than any better.
Exactly right. Let's talk a little bit about the other business of this government. David Lammy, apparently, and we're going to just play you a little clip here, gave money to Syria just last month, £50 million. They're now killing Christians. They're killing anyone that doesn't agree with them. The place is run by a crazed, sort of murderous former member of Al-Qaeda. He's a terrorist who's now in charge of a country. Have a look at what Lammy said when he gave them the money.
Well, today I'm announcing a £50 million package of support and aid to Syria, and I support the ACBA principles that were agreed yesterday. We want to see a Syrian-led and a Syrian-owned future. HDS remains a prescribed organisation, but we can have diplomatic contact, and so we do have diplomatic contact, as you would expect.
I mean, it's the same bloke that gave UNRWA a load of money, even though they were known to have collaborated with the October 7th attacks on Israel from Hamas's point of view. I mean, has this bloke got any brains whatsoever? What on earth is he doing, giving British taxpayers money to a murderous regime run by terrorists?
Well, it's balmy. The UNRWA stuff is shocking, actually. But that seems to be the way with the government. They seem to be all too quick to dole out money internationally. We've seen, the Chagos deal, £18 billion at the same time as we're cutting off winter fuel for pensioners. We're taxing farms to death. Do you remember the council tax promise? Not a penny more on council tax.
Yes.
Council tax is now through the roof.
Yeah.
All
it's
these
about to go up
lies,
again in April, isn't it?
Thrown abroad on all sorts of causes. Yeah, it's going up. In my part of the world, I think we've got 4.95%, while the council is sloshing away money. I know you said something, spending a hell of a lot of money on all the wrong things. They're employing, in my part of the world, they're employing more people on £100,000 than all the other authorities in the area. They're spending money flying people out to the likes of Montpellier and Copenhagen to watch shows to decide if they can bring them back to a festival. It is utterly balmy. Complete waste of money. £700,000 on councillors' allowances and expenses. At the same time, they're ending weekly bin collections. They're closing local recycling centres. They're introducing charges for car park in their local high street, killing off local businesses. It's utter madness. Dodgy Labour Council.
No, exactly right. What about old Sir Lindsay Hoyle, or Just Stop Hoyle, as we like to call him, swanning around the world, supposedly spreading the good word about the British parliamentary system? Turns out that not only has he spent 250,000 quid of our money, he's been taking his missus with him as well for the jollies.
I must admit, I'm not over the detail on this case, but that sounds like a hell of a lot of money to be spent on travel. I'll look into it, Mike.
Well, I can give you the detail if you like. I mean, you could have read it in the Daily Mail last week. You could have read it in the Daily Mail this morning. He went to Singapore, he went to Jakarta, he went to the Cayman Islands, to a very nice spa hotel, which is called something like the 7 Mile Island or something like that. He went to Los Angeles, Gibraltar several times. This is a man who hardly seems to spend much time in the House of Commons. And I know you guys don't like criticising each other because you're probably all at it, but at the end of the day, it's 250 grand, £250,000 quid. He went to Singapore, right? It cost us £23,000. I've been to Singapore. I didn't charge you any money for that, but I can tell you it was a lot less than 23 grand.
That does seem like a hell of a lot of money in times when all this austerity is kicking in and times are hard apparently, you know, times tough and the government's got this black hole. That does seem like utter madness. He's probably getting as many air miles in as Keir Starmer at that rate.
Yeah, well, you know, we shall see. In terms of the other business that we need to discuss, welfare, they're going to try and crack down on it, the Labour Party say. How much success are they going to have?
Well, I think it's probably long overdue, actually. The last government cut back, I think, about 5 billion and had plans to cut back 12 billion. This plan's a few steps back. It's not going anywhere near as much as was planned in terms of welfare reform. Since the pandemic, we've got this huge increase in the number of people who are economically inactive, who aren't going out to job. And it's just not sustainable. It's not sustainable. The money's got to come from somewhere. It's coming from hard-working taxpayers. That money should instead be spent either reducing people's tax burden or being spent on those public services, being spent on that winter fuel allowance for those pensioners.
Yeah, absolutely right. Matt Vickers, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. Shadow Minister for Crime, Policing and Fire, of course. We heard earlier that thanks to this shoplifting epidemic that we've got in this country, Tesco's are experimenting with a new system whereby you push your trolley out through this kind of weighing scale where they basically weigh what it is that you've bought. According to Mike in Erith, he says, what if you have a child in a trolley? My wife likes to stand on the front of the trolley and I'll push her along. It's quicker. Well, your wife likes to stand on it. That's a bit weird. One from Stuart who says, Tesco's, wouldn't it be better to put people on the checkouts instead? Probably. And Deborah in Essex says, Mike, going for it today. I love it. What is the point of weighing the trolleys when shoplifters are not stopped or arrested anyway? It's completely pointless. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is absolutely bonkers. Don't know why. And they're not going to stop shoplifters by doing that, are they? Because shoplifters are just nicking stuff and running out the bloody room. Let's talk to Isabel Oakeshott, 17 minutes past 9. Isabel's in Israel for us this morning. Isabel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, and apologies in advance if the line goes. It's a bit patchy here, and I haven't managed quite to get the amazing Tel Aviv backdrop for us yet. But I'm speaking from Tel Aviv on the morning that Israel has cut electricity supplies to Gaza in the latest of what's being called their hell plan to try to ratchet up pressure on Hamas to release the remaining hostages. It's thought there are about 20 living hostages and many more bodies still to be returned, although intelligence sources admit they can't be sure really how many of the hostages at any given time are alive or dead. In terms of the electricity blackouts, interestingly, people may be envisaging that this plunges Gaza into darkness and it comes hot on the heels of the stopping of aid supplies getting into Gaza. That was another decision that was taken to increase the pressure. And also because a lot of the aid was unfortunately going to Hamas operatives. Right. But within Gaza, there are many generators, and they do have about 45 days worth, I understand, of power supply. Much of it is needed for desalination, and that's not going to stop right away. It's not as if Gaza is going to be cut off from having clean water in the short term. It's just another gesture in a way, but a meaningful one.
Well, indeed. I mean, don't worry, though, because if we can't have Gaza looked after by the people in Gaza, we can bring the people from Gaza here, because we've got this guy that arrived on Thursday, Palestinian Abu Wadi, who arrives on the British shores last Thursday, apparently, shot himself arriving, made a little video, which you can see here. He's now apparently disappeared into the ether. Nobody knows exactly where he's gone. And he said, thank God we've arrived in Britain. He's previously called for Allah to punish Jews completely. He's basically said that he thinks Israel shouldn't exist. He's a supporter of Hamas, he's a terrorist, and he's here in Britain, and we've lost him.
Well, isn't that marvellous?
Yeah.
And significantly, I did a piece for Talk just recently about how we were welcoming to where we were until Talk made a big fuss about it. The UK was the only country in Europe that was allowing a radical Islamic preacher to come and, mouth off and preach his gospel of hatred in our country. What is wrong with us that we keep allowing this to happen? Warning after warning after warning. And one of these days soon, one of these awful characters that we're letting in is going to do something dreadful in the UK. Yeah. And then there'll be all sorts of hand-wringing, and people like you and I will say, how many times did you need to be warned that this is a national security threat?
It really is. It's hard to believe, isn't it, that because even though this is one individual that we've managed to identify, that there are 1,700 other individuals that came into the country last week alone, and he's simply one of them. They could all be as dangerous as he is.
I mean, look, even if a fraction of them are as dangerous as he is, what are we doing here? Allowing a tidal wave of unknown characters from countries where values are very different, and there are organizations that do certainly not share our values. Why are we continuing to allow this never-ending flow? It's not just about money, although the money is catastrophic. You know, we hear the Chancellor continually going on about hard choices having to be made. There'd be rather less hard choices to make if we weren't spending millions of pounds a day accommodating all these people. It is about our safety, and we can't go on about the sovereignty of borders and the importance of that in Ukraine and not even be able to take the basic measures to protect our own security.
Isn't it extraordinary? Let's just going back to Israel and Gaza and what the people are saying there. What have you found in terms of, I mean, incredibly resilient people, obviously, in Tel Aviv, who get, who have missiles fired upon them every single day of the week for years and years and years and years. What are you hearing on the streets?
Well, what I'm hearing is that, you know, the public support for Netanyahu is very, very low. It's fading away. You know, at the same time, when you ask people, well, who would you prefer? The problem is that there's no obvious replacement. So whilst his ratings, if you like, are at an all-time low, nor is there an immediate solution for that. I think what surprised me in the short time that I've been here, and only arrived here last night, so there'll be a lot more to come, is how sort of downbeat the mood music from Israel is. There's a kind of private admission that they're failing here so far. You know, 80% of Gaza has been flattened, and they have not succeeded in wiping out Hamas, far from it. And there's an acknowledgement, you know, maybe they'd be slow to come on the airwaves themselves and say, actually, you know, 18 months in later this year, we really haven't made nearly as much progress as we'd like to have made. There is no doubt they're going to go back into Gaza. You know, this ceasefire will disintegrate. Preparations are, I think, underway for that. I don't know what the time scale is. But there is a sort of slight feeling of despair, of no obvious solution at this point. This thing is dragging on, and you know, we're really very, very far into it without any particular result. We've got the Americans now doing something that they never do, which is negotiating directly with Hamas. It's a point of principle that you don't negotiate with terror organizations. But I think that gives some insight into how, you know, how difficult things have become. But there's also a new chief of staff here in Israel who's much more aggressive than the previous, and a feeling that under Trump, Israel will have the backing to do whatever it feels fit in military terms.
Yes, but interestingly enough, with regard to Trump, it feels as though the focus has kind of moved to Ukraine, doesn't it, at the moment? It's not quite on. I know he made a threat to Hamas, you know, just last weekend, I think it was, but it feels as though Ukraine is the focus of the White House right now.
It really does. And I mean, how many wars can you fight on how many fronts? You know, you can't go all out to bring peace in all places. And Trump did say he was going to end all the wars really quickly. But at the moment, his priority is evidently on Ukraine and Russia. We now had 2 weekends without the release of any Israeli hostages. And you know, soon this is going to come to, he's going to have to come right to the top of Trump's in train. He may have to set aside the Ukraine-Russia problem just to deal with this one for a bit so that there can be some tangible progress. There's more talks today, Israeli representatives in Doha. Be interesting to see whether that actually yields anything. But I feel like the mood is here one of rather somber pessimism. It's remarkable on the streets that there are signs everywhere on bring the hostages home. This dominates this whole city. Yellow ribbons, every public building, every lamppost. You've got the pictures of those who've yet to come home, and it's been a whole long time now.
Absolutely right. I must ask you, Isabel, I know you don't speak for reform, but obviously a lot of people wondering this morning what is going on. A lot of disquiet in the force, if you like. A lot of people who voted for reform disappointed, worried, not sure what to think. Really, I suppose is the best way to describe what their reaction has been. I mean, obviously, you know, Richard Tice, your partner, has been speaking. He spoke yesterday. We couldn't get hold of him today. But you know, what is going on as far as you know?
Well, I understand why people feel disappointed by this, and I think we all do. You know, Reform has got a massive job to do. It's nothing less than trying to save our country, and we should not see Reform being diverted by these squabbles. I think it is very difficult when, sort of ironically, when you've only got a small number of you, 5 MPs, as it were, now 4, it's particularly difficult if one of them is not a team player. That actually has a disproportionate effect. If you've got 200 and you've only got 1 or 2 that are not team players, it's much more manageable, but it's such a tight team. So they've now got to regroup and focus on the job in hand. And I would say to Reform voters, because many of our listeners are, don't be too disheartened by this. It is a bump in the road. You know, there's always turbulence on long flights. And in this case, you know, the big picture here is that the fundamental problems that our country is facing, you know, whether it's the immigration catastrophe, whether it's a net zero con, whether it's the state of the economy and the state of your tax bill, these are the things that people are going to vote Reform for. And as for who's doing what job and who's got the biggest ego, forget all that. It will play out over the next few days. I hope that then the party is able to move on stronger than before, because all these things are a learning experience, and that the party can once again give people the hope that they are desperately craving, because, my God, some party needs to do it, don't they?
It's absolutely right. Isabel, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. And stay safe there. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International Editor in Israel, in Tel Aviv, reporting into us there. Jim in Dorset said, did I hear you correctly just now that our government is directly funding terrorism in Syria, where they are killing Christians and anyone they generally don't like? I would say it's unbelievable, but unfortunately it is completely believable. Well, that is the problem. And Diane from Teesside says, morning, Mike. Nigel Farage has been saying for a while now that Reform was following the Lib Dem playbook with regard to building its community political base, and therefore the party has been concentrating at the ground level on the May elections. This made perfect sense to me, as the movement is a marathon and not a sprint. I have a lot of time for Rupert Lowe, but I was disappointed that he felt it necessary to speak to the Daily Mail and just wish he had held the line. I think a lot of people would say that. So many people have got so much to say about this story. We will continue with our analysis of what is going on and what is actually the truth behind the scenes. How much some Stuart at Edinburgh says, Mike, how come Matt Vickers is not over the details of Lindsay Hoyle? Well, you do wonder, don't you? It's I'll tell you what, MPs speak for I'm not over the detail of it, is I don't really want to talk about it, because it might get me into trouble. That's kind of what he means. I'm not getting away with that, though. One from Sue says, Buenos dias, from a very rainy Spain. Cats and dogs are like men and women. They both have their strengths and weaknesses, but they complement each other. Therefore, the best people have both. There we are. What a great message of togetherness that is. It's 29 minutes past 9.
I'm saying for a party chairman to have made allegations against one of his members who is an MP is quite a seismic thing. Either something happened or it didn't.
Yeah.
OK? That's the end of it. And when the truth comes out from the KC, the independent KC, that Reform UK have put in place to do the investigation, it's going to be really interesting what the findings will be, because it's a binary option. It either happened or it didn't.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 9:32 with you all the way through until 10. Just before that, of course, Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here to bring us up to date with what she's going to be talking about between now and 1 o'clock. Jeremy Kyle back at 4. Ian Collins from 1. Of course, Kevin O'Sullivan from 7. Kevin's going to join us, actually, in a little while because we've got a story about Hampstead Heath and people who walk their dogs there who've got a bit of a problem with some of the other activities that go on, shall we say. There's a tree involved and it's got a name, which I can't say, which rhymes with luck, but it's not luck. It's another word that begins with an F. I can't say it. Bizarrely, I've also got another story that's just come across the desk of King Charles has apparently revealed his eclectic taste in music by releasing his Apple Music playlist. He's apparently the first British monarch in history to record their own podcast, which was aired in full from 6 a.m. this morning. What is he, coming up against Morning Glory? Are you having a laugh, Sir King Charles? Don't even try it. Listen, this is the home of common sense, mate. You'll never beat it. Apparently, top of his royal playlist is none other than Kylie Minogue's Locomotion. Come off it. I mean, I'll go through the list with you later. But included on it is a song by Daddy Lumbar, which is Mapem Pepem Do Me. Crikey. I don't know. I'm not sure about this. We'll come back to that, OK, because we've got some other things to do. Also, breaking news this morning, there's been a big fire in Heathrow. An electric vehicle has burst into flames in the tunnel as you go into Heathrow. The tunnel was closed for a while. Parts of it have now reopened, we're told, but if you are heading there, you might want to be careful about delays because of the fact that the M4 was closed for a while. The tunnel access obviously is not what it should be, and so you might want to allow some extra time if you're travelling from Heathrow today. Right now, though, let's talk to Emma Webber, who's Barnaby Webber's mother, of course. Barnaby was one of those unfortunate souls who was murdered in 2023 by a man who should never have been on the streets of this country. He was also with his good friend Grace O'Malley Kumar. They were both 19, stabbed to death in Nottingham, you will remember, by Valdo Calacane, who was a schizophrenic, who should not have been on the streets, but was that particular morning stabbed to death, unfortunately, along with Ian Coates, an older man somewhere else in the city. Basically, what's happened is that the police have been told that they're going to have to reopen an inquiry into previous attacks by Nottingham triple killer Calacane because the families have been asking for this for weeks and weeks and weeks and months and months and months, and finally it's going to happen. So hopefully something good will come of it. Emma, very good morning to you.
Hi, morning.
Thanks.
How are you, Mike?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for talking to us. Thanks for joining us. I mean, we know what Calacane had done before, that he had attacked people at his place of work, that he was on supposedly under supervision of medics, but they didn't let him, or he was allowed not to take his medication because he was apparently afraid of needles. I mean, so many ridiculous mistakes that were made with this guy. What are you making of this new investigation?
Yeah, I think, Mike, it would take the rest of your show if I were to start detailing the epic level of failures across all the different organisations. But this relates to Leicestershire Police Force, and this relates to prior contact they had, and that was literally a month before Calacane went on his spree in Nottingham and murdered Barney, Grace and Ian. And effectively, we've known about this. We've known about the details for quite some time, and we've been fighting so hard to get to where we are now. And I need to make it very clear that the IOPC statement with regards to new information coming forward, take that with a bit of a pinch of salt, because it's not recently come forward. It's been because of us uncovering and forensically going through their investigation. But they're effectively two police officers in May 2023 were called to a factory where he was working in Leicester, where he had violently assaulted two co-workers. By the time they arrived, he had left. He'd been asked to leave. But essentially, they just didn't do their jobs. They didn't allegedly, they didn't enter his details fully into the police national computer or their other apps that they've got with information, and therefore weren't aware of the outstanding warrant and his prior history with violent assaults and mental health. And so the Leicester Police referred themselves. It was a half-baked investigation. We have seen the outcome and the summary, and since then we've been fighting. And it's another. I hate to use the word victory, but it's another step in calling these people out. So the IOPC have now reopened the investigation. They were planning just 2 weeks ago on holding a management meeting with the officers concerned with regards to their missed opportunities and what they hadn't done, because they said that it was misconduct, not even gross misconduct. So with the new information, effectively, I'm going to be quite brutal and say if the IOPC do their jobs properly this time, they will look into everything, and we will hopefully see the results where the full investigation is put forward and the officers concerned have appropriate action.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's a witch hunt and we're out to destroy people. We're really not.
No, not at all.
We cannot accept and will never accept that so many agencies and so many individuals and organisations just didn't do their jobs.
Right.
They didn't even just do their jobs not very well. They just didn't do them. And all of the excuses and the finger pointing and the not within our remit and that's not how we do things. It's not. Don't think that, unfortunately, whilst our legal team say that our situation is unprecedented, it's only unprecedented because of the amount that we've uncovered and the amount of noise we've made. I fear how many things like this have happened with other cases in the past. And it has to stop. It's abhorrent.
Yeah, it totally is. And you said last time we spoke, I think, that there's not one police force to blame here. There's two police forces to blame. And so I guess that's another part of it. But also, as well, in the papers this morning, I'm seeing a story in the Mail about these NHS staff that accessed A&E records about your son. I mean, it's just unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, how does this stuff happen?
It's soul destroying, and it's devastating because we've now had data breaches and invasions of privacy from the Mental Health Trust, the Acute Hospital Trust, today's story, the police force, the council, the courts service and the prison service. And all of those different investigations on top of the failures leading up to treating, apprehending, stopping Callaghan and investigating his crime and giving him the appropriate sentence. So everything, Mike, that could go wrong has gone wrong. But we knew a few weeks ago, it's only just been made apparent to us that 91 individuals within the QMC and within the Acute Trust in Nottingham, the University Hospital, accessed records on our loved ones in A&E. And thanks to the brutality of that monster, there was no real treatment available to Barnaby Grayson because of how vicious his attack was. So this is, whilst there will be clearly legitimate reasons for people needing to access information, a lot of it was abhorrent voyeurism. And that's just unprofessional. Is a loose term. So that's come about because of our request for an audit into staff accessing files on Callaghan whilst he was allegedly being cared for by the Mental Health Trust. This then uncovered something else, which uncovered a member of medical staff saying, "Hang on, it looks like somebody within the university university hospital rather has uncovered and looked at information they didn't have any reason to." So the audit wouldn't have happened as standard, and none of this information would have come out had something else not happened and gone wrong, and something else before that not gone wrong. which is why I keep saying I don't believe that we're an exception. Unfortunately, I think we are only exceptional because it's been uncovered.
Yeah, I know.
We will be fully looking into this through all the legal channels that we have available, because it's just so wrong. It's just so heartbreaking, and why would you want to look at what happened to my son?
I know. It just doesn't even bear thinking about. I don't know how you manage, really, to be honest. I can't quite get my head around it. But listen, great to talk to you as ever, Emma. Thank you so much for taking the time. Emma Webber, Barnaby Webber's mother. What these families have faced is quite simply disgusting, disgraceful. And I don't even know how you would ever make up for what they've lost and for what they've discovered since their loss. It's just awful. And it tells you what is wrong with the many, many parts of this country's kind of stature and this country's kind of, framework. That, the police can't do their jobs, the NHS can't do their jobs, doctors are malingering, people are just making mistakes right, left and centre, and the result is the deaths of two beautiful young people and another man as well. It just doesn't bear thinking about. I don't know what else you can say, but my heart goes out to Emma and to her family and to all the families involved in this story. It's just dreadful, absolutely awful. It's 9:42. Coming up, we're going to speak to David Mencer from the Israeli government about what's going on at the BBC, because let's face it, there's some anti-Semitism going on at the BBC and it needs to stop. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:45. Kevin O'Sullivan coming up very shortly to talk about what goes on Hampstead Heath. I tell you what, that's going to be an interesting conversation, because I know what goes on there, so does he. It's not just walking dogs either. We've got the King's Music Room, by the way. A couple of other songs for you. Apparently the King likes Grace Jones's La Vie en Rose. Are you having a laugh? Ray's Love Me Again. Daddy Lumber, I've already mentioned. Miriam Makeba, the Click song. Jules Holland and Ruby Turner, My Country Man. And he's got a bonus non-Commonwealth track from Jay-Z, which is slightly controversial given that he's been investigated currently by the FBI for certain aspects of parties that he went to. Crazy in Love, apparently likes that one. Can you imagine him bopping around to that down at, Gloucestershire or whatever it is. Anyway, listen, let's talk to David Menser, Israeli government spokesman, who's here with us because, once again, the BBC under fire over the past week. This Gaza documentary, which is an absolute and utter crock of nonsense. They paid 400,000 quid. Some of it made its way to Hamas, it would appear. An open letter has now been sent by over 200 entertainment industry figures, including Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne, saying basically, what is the BBC going to do about this? They need a full investigation about this anti-Israel bias that continually raises its ugly head. David, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Thank you so much for joining us. I don't know whether you knew about this this open letter, whether or not you've been able to attach yourselves to it, but it does seem, doesn't it, that it's now incontrovertible that the BBC is damaged below the waterline when it comes to anti-Semitism.
It certainly does, Mike, and it is certainly something when Ozzy Osbourne is where you turn to for moral guidance. But it is moral guidance he's providing, because the very basic question is how it is possible that the taxpayers' money, British taxpayers' money, found its way to pay for Hamas themselves. And also, why on earth does the BBC still refuse to call Hamas a terrorist organisation, even though the UK government and much of the world do? Now, when you interview someone on one of these hate-filled marches on the streets of London about why they don't consider Hamas a terrorist organisation, the answer is simple. You know, it's because they want Hamas to win. And I fear that for the BBC, the answer is exactly the same. They don't call Hamas terrorists because they don't believe Hamas terrorists, and potentially that means they want Hamas to win. But we're here in Israel to stop that happening.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, Tim Davie, the Director General, was in Parliament last week answering questions before a select committee. And he actually came out with the words. He got himself on Plank of the Week as a result of this, my show that goes out on a Friday night, because he actually said, you know, the BBC's got one of the most trusted brands in the world. To which I said, well, maybe in Gaza they're very trusted, but they're not trusted actually in Britain anymore.
Absolutely. They repeatedly amplify false claims. The one early on in this war about Israel bombing a hospital, it was found to be false. It was proven to be false. There was a backlash. They took ages to admit that backlash, and more often than not, they push it under the carpet. But also, you know, they give Hamas spokespeople a platform with little or no challenge, while they're always aggressively questioning me. I'll give you an example last night. You know, the news and social media has been full of these appalling massacres in Syria. Up to 1,000 people killed by this HTS jihadist organisation inside Syria, that the BBC has again given some sort of
tinted spectacle view.
Exactly, and still, you know, and they came straight to me to ask me difficult questions. So it's clear that then when there is news proving the deadly nature of these jihadists in our region, they do everything they can to try and divert the attention by attacking Israel. That's precisely what they did with me last night.
Well, it wouldn't surprise you to know that Jeremy Bowen, of these parts, the so-called special foreign correspondent, and very experienced man as well, who used to be nowhere near as deranged as he is now, was photographed, was filmed actually walking around in the presidential palace of Syria with the new leader Ahmad al-Sharaa, who is of course a former member of Al-Qaeda. He may still be. He's a jihadist, he's a terrorist, he's a criminal. Sort of more or less fawning over him, you know, touching him, putting his arm around him, you know, smiling with him, as if this guy was in some way the deliverance of the new Messiah.
Absolutely. The obsequious nature which the BBC have framed Syria's new terrorist leader is quite frankly sickening. They're willing to overlook his Al-Qaeda providence and his ISIS providence, his support for the October 7th massacres. And the proof is in the pudding. Look what's happened over the last few days. Civilians massacred. We've seen the images on social media. They are absolutely appalling. But where you won't see those images is on the BBC, because they're trying to whitewash the actions of jihadis. Why, Mike? Because it's appeasement. And as Churchill said, You know, appeasement is feeding the crocodile, hoping that he'll eat you last. Well, it's not going to work. The jihadism which we're fighting here, which we're standing up to, will, if we're not successful, make its way to the streets of London. It already has, which means we're on the first line of defence, and we are going to be successful.
Yeah, well, I very much hope so. Wish you luck with it. David, good to talk to you. David Mensa, the Israeli government spokesman. Of course, we'll bring you up to date with all the happenings in the Middle East over the course of the day today right here. Julie Hartley-Brewer's coming in about 7 or 8 minutes' time. Kevin O'Sullivan is going to be here to talk about the battle for Hampstead Heath, because let's face it, it's about dogs, but it's also about dogging. I know it's a bit early for that kind of thing. My apologies. This is Talk.
Some breaking news this morning revealed that under the Terrorist Act, 242 people were arrested in the year to June of this year.
Something you can indulge in as to all the people who aren't going to prison because, well, there's no prison spaces.
So this is a Talk exclusive we've been looking at.
I said, you take these cuffs off me and speak to me like a human being rather than a common criminal.
You're just left wondering, does these people who lead us actually hate Britain?
Yeah.
Do they not love our country and everything that we've stood for?
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:54, almost at the end of the show. Kevin O'Sullivan coming up very shortly to talk about the battle for Hampstead Heath. Let's get a voice note first, though.
Hi, Mike. It's Michael from Norwich. Well, I'm calling up about Farage and Rupert Lowe. Do you know, at Talk Radio, my favourite presenters are Mike Graham and Kevin O'Sullivan. They're both brilliant, so articulate, but I can't pick which one's the best. And it's the same with Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe.
What do you mean you can't pick which one's the best? For heaven's sake, it's not difficult, is it? Clearly. Kevin O'Sullivan, very good morning to you.
Yeah, I think it's me, Mike, definitely.
Yeah, obviously. Well, that was what I was going to say, clearly. The battle for Hampstead Heath. I mean, Chasbo, your dog, you know, the most irritating dog in the history of dogs. You take him out into the glorious wilds of Hampstead Heath. But there's a problem, because apparently everywhere you look, there's all sorts of nastiness going on.
Yeah, so there's this big demonstration by, shall we say, our local gay community.
Yes.
Claiming the right to this huge area of Hampstead.
The sodomites, as they like to call themselves.
Well, yeah, right near where I live. Now, I can't understand why this row has erupted. So apparently signs have, actually I've seen a few, signs have appeared in this area where the gay guys go, saying, you know, this is not a cruising area, this is for dog walkers and all that. Well, look, there's a system here, and it's always been here, right? Around about 5 p.m., right? The heath, our local heath, where I take my dog, where everyone else does, that is for dog walkers, for families. They have a great time. Around about 5 p.m., the nature of that area of the heath, which is about 500 yards from where I am now, changes. The dog walkers all move out, and the gay guys come on in.
Right.
And they spend the night there. I mean, I came back on Saturday night about 1 a.m., and there were literally about 100 cars all parked down the road. And then if you look into the heath, you can see all their phone lights shining where they use them to hook up. So basically, I don't think there is any real friction. I don't know how this has happened.
Friction.
But we have an old system whereby the dog walkers and the families move at about 5 p.m. The gay guys come in and spend the night there. And 'twas ever
There's a
thus.
place, I must ask you about this, right? I can't say the word, but there is a place called the something tree.
Yeah.
Sounds like luck, but it isn't luck. It's another word. Is there such a tree? Do you know where that is?
Yeah, well, I know particularly which this tree is. It's sort of over at an angle. You could lean on it quite handily. But let me tell you, there are a lot of other similar trees that you
Sure
could
there are.
name if
Listen,
you wanted.
this is a terrible story for me. I spent my childhood in Hampstead Heath. You know, I used to, go there. I rode my bike around it every day, pretty much. You know, I don't recognise this picture you're painting, I'm afraid.
Well, this is exactly where George Michael was caught. You remember that?
Yeah,
famous...
of course.
So, I mean, let me tell you. I mean, hundreds of them come every night, particularly in the summer.
Yeah.
In the summer, it's absolutely buzzing. As I say, you can see all their phones light shimmering through the darkness of the trees.
Right. It's kind of a no-go area then, isn't it?
Well, it's a no-go area for families after 5 p.m.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a summer's evening. You want to go out, hang out, But listen, Kevin, good to see you. Be careful of where you go, I suppose, would be what I would say. I mean, Kevin, I should say, by the way, who once spent about 2 hours looking for his phone. So he said on Hampstead Heath. It is just behind his house, I kid you not. Judy Hartley-Brewis here. Very good morning to you.
That's his story and he's sticking to it.
That's his story, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a shame, though, isn't it? I mean, I'm as free as the next person, but I know a whole area being taken over by kind of sordid activity.
Well, no, but whether it's straight people, it's not true that being gay people, it's like straight people. It's like, could you not have open-air sex where people might be walking their dogs?
Exactly.
I mean,
you might just go home, don't you? I mean
I don't know.
Not good enough.
I don't like the cold.
Well, that's the other thing. Sand. I mean, it's not good.
God.